Leader, I can confirm that the live stream has started.
Thank you. Good morning, Mittendar. Welcome to this virtual meeting of Cornwall Council's Cabinet. Before consideration of today's business, I'll outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting has been live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and has also been recorded. If colleagues could remember not to have their cameras on unless they're speaking, that would be appreciated. When members are speaking, they can choose to use their video. If the Council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, I'll adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issues cannot be resolved, I'll halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, I'll adjourn for a short period to try to re-establish their connection. As I call members to speak, I'll remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, the Democratic Services Officer will advise you. Votes will be taken by a roll call and the result announced by the Democratic Services Officer. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that Cabinet members who wish to speak on an item should indicate by using the raise your hand function, and members not on Cabinet who wish to speak should indicate by typing X in the chat box. Before we start today's business, I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer to confirm all Cabinet members are present. Democratic Services Officer, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll now call each member's name. Please confirm your name and electoral division. Councillor Jeff Brown, Portfolio Holder for Transport.
Good morning, everyone. Jeff Brown, I'm the representative for Newquay Central.
Councillor Tim Dwelly, Portfolio Holder for Culture, Economy and Planning.
Yeah, Tim Dwelly, Cornwall Councillor for Penzance East. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Gibbons, Portfolio Holder for Customers. Are you there, Mike?
I trust you can hear me. Reception yesterday wasn't good. Yeah, can you hear me?
Your audio is quite broken up, Councillor Gibbons. It might be worth.
Yes, we had that. I'll take the camera off. We had that problem yesterday. Can you hear me better now?
That is much clearer. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. So thank you for Councillor Julian German, Leader of the Council.
Good morning, Julian German, Roseland Electoral Division.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford, Portfolio Holder for Climate Change and Neighbourhoods.
Good morning, Edwina Hannaford, representing Lou West, Lansallis and Lanteglos Division.
Thank you. Councillor Sally Hawken, Portfolio Holder for Children, Wellbeing and Public Health.
Good morning, Sally Hawken, Niscard East.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Mitchell, Portfolio Holder for Homes.
Mittendar, good morning. Andrew Mitchell, St Ives West.
Thank you. Councillor Rob Nolan, Portfolio Holder for Environment and Public Protection.
Good morning, Rob Nolan, Truro Redanic.
Thank you. Councillor Adam Painter, Deputy Leader of the Council and Portfolio Holder for Resources.
Good morning all. Adam Painter, representing Launceston North and North Pennine.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Rob Rothschild, Portfolio Holder for Adults.
Good morning, Rob Rothschild, representing the Camford Division.
Thank you. So I can confirm that all Cabinet members are present. I can also confirm the following officers are present. We have Ms Kate Canally, Chief Executive, Ms Tracy Langley, Chief Operating Officer and Section 151 Officer, Mr Phil Mason, Strategic Director for Economic Growth and Development, Ms Helen Charlesworth May, Joint Accountable Officer for Public Health and Care, Cornwall Council and NHS Kernow, Ms Meredith Teasdale, Strategic Director for Together for Families, Ms Sophie Hoskins, Strategic Director for Neighbourhoods, and Ms Melanie O'Sullivan, Monitoring Officer. I'll hand back to you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda, or the first item on the agenda, is apologies for absence, and we've heard that all of Cabinet are with us today. Declarations of interest. Any colleagues with declaration of interest? No, in which case we move on to agenda item number 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of February 2021. These are for accuracy on pages 5 to 40. Have any Cabinet colleagues got matters of accuracy to raise? No, in which case I'll move the minutes of the last meeting, and Councillor Painter will second. Democratic Services Officer, if we can take the vote, please.
Thank you. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against, or abstain from the minutes. Thank you. It's Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mikey Thorne-Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And Councillor Rob Rothschild.
For.
Thank you. Everybody has voted unanimously. I'll hand back to you, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Democratic Services Officer. So agenda item number 4 is leaders' announcements. Welcome to this last Cabinet meeting of this council. It may be the last Cabinet meeting, but we're still extremely busy and facing an incredibly busy few months ahead, not only preparing for the forthcoming election and getting ready for the G7 summit in June, but of course continuing to deal with the effects of the ongoing pandemic. It is vital that we do all that we can to ensure that our economy is in the best possible position to restart once the restrictions on our daily lives begin to be lifted, and whatever support is needed by our businesses is available quickly and easily accessed. However, I'm sorry to report that our Cornish economy was dealt a real blow earlier this month, quite separately from the devastating effects of the pandemic. In its recent spending review, the government quietly announced that Cornwall would not be in Tier 1 for the new Levelling Up Fund, but would instead be in Tier 2, leaving us at risk of missing out on vital funding. There's 4.8 billion to be allocated for infrastructure projects across the UK, mainly focused on town centre and high street regeneration, local transport projects and culture and heritage. Now, thanks to the government's decision, we will not be at the front of the queue for this vital support, despite being recognised as one of the most economically deprived regions of the country. With the loss of EU funding we're facing following Brexit, to be told we're in the second tier is a huge blow. The cynical among us may suggest that the funding is being targeted at more politically sensitive constituencies, but whatever the reason, it is damaging for Cornwall. It also ties into the effects that another government decision will have on Cornwall. On Sunday, people across the country will be filling out their census forms as the once in a decade snapshot of our country is taken. There is, of course, one question that stands out on the form for myself, a simple question of nationality, and I know many of you share the same feelings. I would dearly have loved to see the option Cornish included as one of the tick boxes, and not just because that I'd like to see it there, but because of the statistical integrity that that gives. But despite lobbying from all sides, it was not to be. Therefore, we are left once more reminding people of the option to select other and write in Cornish. It is incredibly frustrating to find ourselves in this position again. Back in 2014, the Cornish were officially recognised as a national minority and therefore supposedly afforded the same status as the other Celtic nations, the Welsh, the Scots and the Irish. It was a seminal moment for Cornwall and a real recognition of the wonderfully rich heritage and culture that we enjoy. And of course, our own language, and the language is another thing that you can recognise on the census by putting Cornish down if you're a Cornish speaker. I can remember at the time the feeling that that recognition was a real turning point, and that the fight to be recognised as a distinct part of the melting pot of cultures within the UK was finally being won. Sadly, it does seem that in some ways the official recognition was little more than paying lip service to our demands. More than 70,000 people classed themselves as Cornish at the last census in 2011, and I hope that we'll see many more do the same on Sunday when this year's data is recorded. Not only will it add to the case to ensure that this is the last time Cornish fails to appear as a tick box option, but it will provide data on just how the health, housing, work and education for those who class themselves as Cornish may differ to other nationalities. In the fight to get the government to create an economic level playing field for the whole country and to make sure Cornwall no longer misses out on the funding offered to other parts of the country, the data could prove invaluable. In today's meeting, we will look at how we've focused on Cornwall's priorities during the 4 years of this council. There's much that we can be proud of in how we've stood up for Cornwall, but until we get the government to give us the support we require and deserve, the devolution that we need, it will remain an incredibly hard fight. This being the last cabinet meeting of this council, it does provide a moment for reflection, and I'm sure that there will be some more of this at full council next week, but I do want to reflect on the 526 deaths where COVID is mentioned and the death certificate that have taken place in Cornwall. These are people's loved ones, family members, friends and members of our community, and it's important that we take a moment to remember them. We are already coming across anniversaries, and there will be times of reflection, but we are also still in the pandemic. So it is incredibly important that we do continue to follow the public health guidance of hands, face and space. We may be looking forward to a time where there are less restrictions, but I'm sure that there will be public health rules to follow for quite some time, and we want to make sure that we're not in a place that other countries such as Italy are finding themselves in, of going back into lockdown. So please do follow public health guidance. One of the things that we know about Cornwall that has been absolutely evident over the last year is the strength of our communities. The individuals and the community response has been absolutely fantastic, and that strength of our community is a fantastic perennial Cornish asset. People have kept people safe, and I know that they will also come together to do all that they can to build back better, to build a fairer, more inclusive, greener, cleaner Cornwall in the future. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank council officers for their fortitude, resilience and adaptability throughout the pandemic. And in terms of still being in the pandemic, we still have 36 officers currently redeployed into key areas of enforcement, adult social care, public health and the call centre. And we have more staff available for redeployment, whether that is for reopening or whether it is unfortunately for further restrictions coming in the future. And my sincere thanks to all of our staff. They have done not only over the last year but throughout the 4 years and before, and I know, and for what I know that they will do in the future for Cornwall. I'd like to thank all of the councillors of Cornwall Council and indeed all of the councillors across Cornwall at whatever level. I'd like to thank councillors for all of their support, but also for their challenge. It's really important that the democratic process works well, and that we can see that happening. There are threats to democracy, not only globally, but within the UK, and we need to do all that we can every day to protect and enhance our democracy. and I'm sure that the forthcoming elections will be a great example of that. In terms of the Cabinet meeting, I'd like to thank all of those officers involved in the Cabinet meetings, Democratic Services, IS, others, all that have kept democracy going. That's been really important, but in terms of Cabinet in particular, my thanks to those specific officers in Democratic Services who support the executive function. Also to the Cabinet Office, some people will not know who those people are, but there's the officers that support the Cabinet members, and all of those people that have supported the Cabinet, both past and present, new and old, who do such a fantastic job in supporting us. My sincere thanks to all of you. And of course to my Cabinet colleagues, all of them over the last 4 years, for all that they have done for Cornwall, and I'm sure in whatever way in the future will continue to do so. Thank you all. So that's leaders' announcements drawn to a close. We'll now move to questions from the public, and we have 2 questions from the public today. So the first question is from Mr. Roden of Truro, and I believe Mr. Roden, you've joined us to ask your question.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, so I think it's probably a question for Councillor Dwelly. Well, good morning, first of all, Councillor German. It's in the context of the recent announcement about the PIDAR development. There was a statement by the council that said there'd been public engagement with everybody, and that because of that there'd been some amendments made. So my question is, what engagement has there been and who's been involved? What changes have been made to the application, which was refused a few weeks ago? And will the new application be submitted during the PERDA period?
Thank you, Mr. Roden, for your question. And you're right, Councillor Dwelly is responding. Councillor Dwelly, please.
Thank you, Councillor Roden, and hello, Stuart.
Hello.
Hi. So I'll start first of all with your engagement question. Since the Strategic Planning Committee meeting, the project team has met with me and other Cabinet members and all sorts of key officers to address the concerns that were raised at that meeting to agree the next steps. As part of this process, the team has also revisited and reconsidered all those extensive comments that it received since 2019, working with residents, the MOU group, local businesses, landowners, voluntary and community sector partnerships. So a very wide range of discussions had previously been held. That was over 200 organisations. And as you know, the team attended the City Council on a number of occasions, and this actually culminated in the City Council, Truro City Council Planning Committee, recommending approval of the outline application with conditions. On the second query about changes that have been made to the application since that refusal, this is my update. Comments made at and by the Planning Committee have been taken on board, I can assure you, and Cornwall Council is working through a number of options to address these concerns, particularly around parking issues, the heights of some of the buildings and massing. And as the updated plans are developed, and they're not done yet, and we have something to share, when we do, we will continue to engage fully with members, partners and stakeholders between now and the end of April. Everyone will be fully briefed on any changes that are made. Finally, Stuart, you asked if there will be engagement during the PERDA period. It's important to stress that we will be working strictly within the rules. So whilst there will be no public meetings during that period, the team will continue one-to-one sessions with members and others and keep an open dialogue and continue collaborating with the aim of reaching what I hope will be a consensus. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Roden, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, please, if that's okay. I mean, Thank you very much, Tim, and that has really helped to clarify it to some extent. I think the press statement that was put out was incredibly misleading. It did give the impression that there had been furthering. It said engagement with everybody. Now, I suppose it's how you define everybody. But anyway, the point I wanted to make was that I think the fundamental problem with the development was that the council, and it was a cabinet decision, but I think it was driven by officers, they were looking to create a self-financing development. And that led to the scale and the height and the massing, which was the thing that people were quite exercised about. And I wonder whether before it goes back into a planning application, whether the cabinet, and obviously it will be a new cabinet, should consider this issue of the finance of the scheme, because my fear is that you would end up in the same place, that the height and scale was driven by the financial imperative of making it self-financing. So I wonder whether Tim could comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Roden. Councillor Dwelly, please.
Yes, so I thank you very much for that. Yes, of course, we're fully aware that we have tried to do this as a self-financing scheme, and my personal view as I stand here now in this role is that we should see if we can do that. I don't think we're in the business of trying to spend our money where we don't have to, and one of the advantages of having an investment programme is that we can borrow money at very low interest rates, and I can report that we are negotiating to see whether we can make a higher net surplus on this scheme based on the current availability of borrowing, and that I think is the way to go. I don't think we should be necessarily falling back on spending our own capital on top where we don't need to. But that's an open question. It is certainly noted, Councillor Roden, what you're saying, and we're fully aware of the fact that there were certain constraints caused by the intent to do this without paying. But I would just stress that the money we've spent on this project is all going to, if it's delivered, albeit in a way that has been altered to respond to what you and others have said, will be recovered, and there will be, if we can do this, and I think we can as a council, a surplus made. So it's a win-win, and I'm personally very much dedicated to town centre vitality and town living, and I think it will be marvellous for Truro that if this goes through eventually with lots of people living in Truro and spending their money in Truro. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dwelly. Thank you, Mr. Roden, for your questions. So the next public question is from Mr. R. Truan of Loo regarding new council homes and the housing waiting list. Mr. Truan couldn't join us, so I'll read the question. Can the portfolio holder please outline the number of houses the council intends to build or buy over the next 10 years? And can the portfolio holder outline how many people are currently registered as waiting for a house with Cornwall Housing as of March 2021? And are these figures available per location? Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thanks to Mr. Truan for the question. There are currently just over 14,400 live applications on Cornwall Home Choice. We don't normally break down that figure into a geographic breakdown, but it can be done. The report for that isn't available today, but I will make sure it is run and published in a way that the public and fellow members can access that data. In February 2020, this council agreed a truly ambitious new business plan for our housing revenue account, which will see 1,700 new homes provided mainly for social rent and shared ownership, with a small number of affordable rent by March 2028. This is the first time in decades that we've been able to plan for such a large programme of new social housing development throughout Cornwall, and we are well underway with delivering this huge ambition. In addition, the council has, through its partnership company Treveth, we will facilitate the development of hundreds of new homes in the coming years, mainly for market rent and affordable housing. The first scheme in this programme was completed in 2018 on sites at Bodmin and Tolvaden, with also 28 flats completed in late 2020 in Newquay. Construction is underway at a site in Liscard, and more homes will be built shortly on sites at Bodmin, Redruth, Launceston and Newquay. So in reply and response to the direct question, those are the only figures that I can give as this council's ambition for the next 10 years. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell, for your response. So the next agenda item, that was all of the questions from the public. The next agenda item is number 6, Council Performance Report Q3 and Q4 projections 2020 to 21. Councillor Painter, please.
Thank you, Leader. Colleagues, in addition to responding successfully to the pandemic, we're continuing to focus on delivering the Council's priorities for Cornwall agreed in 2017. With this being our last performance report for this administration, I'm pleased to inform that despite the challenges of managing the impact of the pandemic, we've met 75% of our success measures by the end of Q3. Additionally, given the proximity to the end of Q4, we are predicting with a degree of confidence that we will meet 76% of our success measures for 2020-21. Also, unlike several local authorities across the country, we are forecasting an underspend in a particularly difficult year. We continue to put measures in place to safeguard and protect our most vulnerable residents. This exceeds all expectations for our final year, because around this time 12 months ago, we were thrown into new ways of living our lives and approached our first national lockdown. Since March last year, our lives and livelihoods have continued to be affected by the pandemic, and the Council and its employees have responded, showing full commitment and professionalism in providing residents and visitors with the essential services they need day in and day out. The leadership, public spirit and stability provided by the staff and elected members has made Cornwall Council a dependable rock for residents in this unprecedented storm. And this report personifies just that. At the end of Q1, we reported that only 44% of our success measures were met. However, that figure now stands at 75%. During that period, we've moved from response to recovery and back again with a third national lockdown in place at the beginning of this year. Despite this roller coaster of events, the Council has demonstrated its resilience and capability throughout an unprecedented and unparalleled period of history. It is fitting that the last item on the Cabinet agenda highlights this administration's achievements throughout the last 4 years, and this report touches on a number of those. In Q3, we have continued to deliver the Healthy Cornwall priority and protect the most vulnerable resident groups via strategic implementation of the COVID-19 grants for food security and the winter grant to alleviate economic hardship among families. In February, we completed our 1,000 homes priority as promised by this administration. Colleagues within the housing service have also reduced the percentage of long-term empty homes in Cornwall from 40% higher to just 3% higher than the English average. Our green and prosperous priority has been focused on ensuring our economy and creative sectors are supported. For example, the Creative Cornwall Calling crowdfunder aimed to help the sector bounce back, with several projects receiving full funding across Cornwall. Penzance was also awarded £10.4 million from the Future High Street Fund in December to help residents deliver transformational improvements to help residents, businesses, workspace and vacant high street properties. Our Connecting Cornwall priority has also seen several projects secured, including £600,000 and £700,000 from the Department of Transport's Active Travel Fund, which has supported pedestrianisation and cycle infrastructure trails in Penzance and Falmouth, as well as a quiet lane network in Truro to support more walking, cycling and healthy town centres. And lastly, our work towards several projects within our Democratic Cornwall priority, that our latest resident survey found that 69% of residents are also satisfied with the way we run things, again an increase from 59% in 2019 and now higher than the Local Government Association's national average figure. Despite these achievements, our overall position remains uncertain, particularly in respect of our finances. With the easing of restrictions, we hope our new normal for Cornwall will continue to emerge. We're forecasting to achieve a small underspend in this financial year. This is an improvement from the September forecast as additional financial controls have been implemented to mitigate the pressures. However, this position remains fragile with the effect of the third lockdown yet to be fully realised and the adult social care financial position still being extremely volatile. In February, full council approved the council's 2021 to 22 budget and the medium-term financial plan up to 2025. Whilst the budget is balanced for the next financial year, there are considerable savings to be identified to balance the budget over the whole medium term. And we carry significant risks over and above our normal day-to-day risks. This is not going to be easy. On top of £33 million of savings already identified for the next financial year, we need to find further savings of 27 million over the course of this financial plan. These savings will be delivered through the development of the council-wide transformation programme, Cretha Warba, Better Together. Saving plans and opportunities will be developed during 2021 to ensure the ongoing financial sustainability of the council, as well as reshaping the organisation and redesigning services to deliver residents' priorities within the financial reach. In addition, the ongoing pandemic is likely to have a long-term permanent impact on demand for council services, and will continue to lobby the government for a sustainable funding solution. The recommendation on the full council is for the approval in the overall uplift of the capital programme by around 51.8 million. This reflects the new additions and changes to individual schemes during the third quarter of the year, which are detailed within Appendix 3 to the report. I'm happy to take any questions, but would ask you to focus on those areas of concern and mitigating actions now being reported. But before I do, I would like to pay tribute and thanks to officers that have supported me over the past 2 years as the portfolio holder for resources. Leader, I'll now read the recommendations that we have. So recommendation 1, that the Q3 2020-21 Council Performance Report covering performance, including year-end projections, finance, risks and projects, is considered and reviewed in the context of the significant and unprecedented impact of COVID-19. 2, that the continued efforts of the Council to deliver an unprecedented response to support Cornwall's residents and businesses during the pandemic is welcomed. 3, that the proposed reserve movements, budget uplifts and environments detailed in Appendix 2 to the report be approved. 4, that in accordance with the Council's financial regulations, the write-off is approved as detailed in Appendix 2, Section 9 of the report of Rocco Inn Limited non-domestic rates accounts for £54,034.24. 5, that the Section 151 officer be authorised in consultation with the leader and deputy leader to approve the final 2020-21 outturn report, including any variations or additions to the reserve movements given in Appendix 2 to the report, that they are required to ensure the year-end accounts are submitted by the statutory deadline. 6, that the revised 2020-21 capital programme and future year cash flows as detailed in Appendix 3 to the report be noted, and the changes to the capital programme be approved, subject to approval by full council. So the recommendation to council is 7, that the council's total capital programme be increased by 51.834 million in relation to the changes detailed in Appendix 3 to the report, and funded through the following movement in funding sources: prudential borrowing 37.286 million, grants and contributions received 13.429 million, and capital receipts of 1.119 million. Thank you very much. Happy to propose those recommendations.
Thank you, Deputy Leader, and Councillor Ethel Gibbons to second, please.
I won't put on my video, Leader, as I think reception is probably not good, but hopefully you and colleagues can hear what I've got to say. Yes, I'm happy to support the recommendations that are put forward. Obviously, Q3 has been a challenging period, but I think we're getting towards the end in a positive state, so I'm very happy to support the recommendations as set out.
Thank you, Councillor Ethel Gibbons, and Cabinet members. Hands up to come in, please. Councillor Brown, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. First of all, refer members to page 47, where I'm delighted to say we continue to deliver 99% of all potholes requiring attention, 48 hours in urban areas and 72 hours on the rural roads. And that's despite a report in the Times which conveyed a very different message. I did challenge the Times on that. They got their information completely wrong. They have apologised, and I believe they printed a retraction or a correction. So that's really good news. The item on page 48, the number of bus passengers not yet available, it would be completely inappropriate to record these numbers at this time whilst only essential journeys are being taken. However, I'm delighted that in the National Bus Strategy announced on Monday, Cornwall was recognised as ambitious and a leader in integrated public transport. It also confirmed the 23.5 million to deliver a 4-year bus fare pilot across Cornwall, which will see fares for all travellers in Cornwall reduced significantly. We had hoped, as you know, to start this already, but due to COVID, this has been delayed, and the start will hopefully be this autumn when travel constraints are removed, and then we can actually really build on the bus patronage. Work on the Saints Trail continues. Although it's showing red, we are negotiating with landowners and optimistic that further agreements will be achieved in the next few weeks. Officers are very clear that we must deliver this scheme within budget. Significant work has already been completed or are ongoing at Goonhaven, Carland Cross, and the Newquay end of the trail, which will terminate in the Waterworld car park. Work there is ongoing. I saw it this morning, an investment of about £700,000. The transport budget overall is forecast to overspend by 8.6 million, but after COVID pressures are received, we expect this to be an underspend of about £460,000. It would be wrong of me not to flag my concern that the financial settlement for 21-22 has seen a £10 million reduction on our highways maintenance budget, and we are currently working to minimise any negative impacts that this reduction of funding from the government will create. But this will certainly be a real challenge for my successor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. What we've achieved around public transport is indeed fantastic for residents, a real achievement across this administration. Councillor Rothschild, please.
Thank you, Leader. Rather than repeat myself, I'll be giving a full response under item 7.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rothschild. So the next item is that Adult Social Care Transformation Update Report, Quarter 3. So we'll come to that shortly, colleagues. Councillor Hannaford, please. Councillor Brown, you've still got your camera on.
Thank you, Leader. Just wanted to draw attention on page 66, strategic and critical performance indicators, and specifically the one about more services and local assets under local influence or control of the local community. So despite the pandemic and lockdown, with the localism team and town and parish councils focused quite rightly on the response to the pandemic within our communities, we are on target to meet our devolution agenda there, putting much loved and locally valued assets and services back under local control and influence. I too would like to thank those communities for their ambition and their resilience in serving their communities, but also the officers for their hard work and creativity in delivering for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hannaford. Absolutely. So no other Cabinet members have indicated at this stage. So I've got Councillor Olivier and Councillor Taylor. If after those two questions no one else has indicated, we'll assume that there's no more. Councillor Harris has now come in, so we'll take those three. Councillor Olivier first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor German. I'd like to start by saying I share your disappointment about the news on the Levelling Up Fund, that Cornwall is not considered to be a priority. You mentioned the word cynical. I strongly suspect the funding formula being used has nothing to do with social and economic need and a lot to do with the size or not of Conservative MP majorities. That's the only possible explanation I can think of for the way we've missed out. My question refers to a matter that and it's directed at Adam, refers to a matter I've referred to before, about the need to have a grant fund for food poverty organisations in Cornwall to apply to. A grant, as I've said before, a grant system that worked very well last year, or in this current financial year, when funded by DEFRA. The need has not gone away. The number of families, number of households in receipt of universal credit in Cornwall has doubled since the start of the pandemic, and it isn't going down anytime soon. It's not going down dramatically anytime soon. I did previously suggest that the money saved by the fact that councillor allowances were not increased as was originally intended, that money might be used for that purpose, but it was explained to me the money was needed for free school meals in Easter, which of course I completely accept. However, I now understand some additional funding has been found for those free school meals, separate from the money that I identified as being saved in the councillor allowance by the councillor allowances decision. I've talked to Councillor Painter about this, so I would like to know, has he given any further consideration to the possibility of introducing a fund in this financial year for food poverty organisations in Cornwall to apply for grants so that they can meet the need which is so widespread in so many communities in Cornwall?
Thank you, Councillor Olivier. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question, but I did want to clarify something. The Levelling Up Fund is obviously totally different to the Shared Prosperity Fund, and the criteria for the Levelling Up Fund is to target areas that have not had that investment. Now, obviously, Cornwall has had huge investment from the government. You know, we're just talking about the transport infrastructure investment and the Towns Fund and the Heritage and Cultural. So I did really want to make that quite clear. It is totally different to the Shared Prosperity Fund, which will be replacing EU funding. But my question relates to page 69, if I may, and that is at 1.5. And I wanted to ask a question around that loan to our leisure service providers. Back in 2016, when we made millions of pounds available to fund a capital enhancement cost, which was the maintenance backlog, I want to know what monitoring is actually doing in relation to that severe investment into that maintenance backlog. And also at that time, rather strangely, the savings to the council were going to be 3.5 million, which seems to be rather close to the figure that's now been used here on page 69 for the loan. What I would like to know is that loan is also covering the top-up furlough requirements that GLL have made? I know that they have gone to other local authorities to get a top-up, so I would like clarification on that one. And if I may, on page 805 of the last Cabinet papers, it did make a risk provision, and I'm wanting to have it clarified that the 3.5 is actually that risk provision that was identified at the last Cabinet meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. No question around the funding stream. So just to respond to that comment, the Shared Prosperity Fund, we've heard the Prime Minister, Martin Oates, on Sunday Politics did an interesting piece a couple of weeks ago where the Prime Minister said 3 times that Cornwall would receive the same level of funding. So that would be through the Shared Prosperity Fund. We estimate that we'll receive 3 million, but whatever the reality is of what we receive rather than an estimate, the total funding this financial year is 220 million for the whole country. So the likelihood of us receiving the 100 million that we would have received seems extremely unlikely. So just to clarify that point around the replacement European funding. Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of questions, one of which I think Councillor Taylor has half asked, but I shall ask it again. On page 49, there's a reference to the Saints Trails, I apologise, which says they're reporting red due to budget constraints. But in fact, in terms of the budget constraints, the strategic director at an audit meeting recently gave an unequivocal statement that these would come in on budget. Isn't the real issue there that the issue of land purchases? I mean, I noticed that Councillor Brown said further agreements were still to be signed, but the last I heard on this was that in fact no legally binding agreements had been signed. And if I can move on to page 69 and perhaps just ask us the same question in a different way that Councillor Taylor asked about the loan to GLL. There's reference to a need to write off a large part of this £3.4 million loan, something which amusingly the portfolio holder knew nothing of at a scrutiny meeting yesterday. But isn't there a much bigger issue here in that when the GLL contract was set up, did we not make a very large loan to them? And is about 18-20 million pounds? And is there not now a severe risk that we might have to write a large part of that off as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. So we'll take those three lots of questions, and colleagues, if anyone else wants to come in, please put your X in the box. So Councillor Harris, if you'd like to turn your camera off. The first question was from Councillor Olivier, directed at Councillor Painter. It seems as though there's been some discussions with yourself, but Councillor Hawkin may wish to comment as well. Councillor Painter.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Olivier, for your question. And indeed, we had a very good chat with Councillor Olivier around his requests for extra funding going to food poverty organisations, and we did talk through all the work that this council has done working with food poverty organisations, and that work is continuing as far as pulling together, you know, how that fund has worked and how it supported people, the work that we've done to support food banks and make sure people don't go hungry, as well as obviously our support for free school meals and how we're doing that. And he is correct that we've had some additional funding become available to help us with free school meals, but that is only going to cover the Easter holidays. It doesn't sort of cover the half terms, and it certainly doesn't go forward into summer. So we are looking at the best way of dealing with some of those issues. We have also been working with voluntary organisations to do an audit of where they are as far as their provisions to be able to support food poverty and issues within Cornwall. And obviously, as was said, universal credit is an issue where we've had many more people claiming universal credit. I know they're having a slight top up at the moment, which again has been extended, but clearly it's a very difficult time for very many people. Equally, I said earlier that there is huge volatility within the adult social care area because of the pandemic and because of everything that we're doing as a council, stepping up to make sure that we look after all of our residents in Cornwall. And because of that massive volatility, we're not yet at year end, and we're wanting to make sure that clearly we can finish the year at least with a break-even position. Now, I said currently we're forecasting a very small underspend, which obviously is good. We're going to come in just within budget, but because of that volatility, I don't feel at this time it would be right to allocate any further funding to any other budgets. So the answer is no, we're not looking to put any extra money into those food poverty organisations, but we are very, very much working with them and the whole of the voluntary sector to make sure that they are supported, and we will keep that under review. And it could well be that if there is an underspend, or if there is the availability of funds to help out, then that situation might change. But I don't think at the moment we're not looking to change that. Councillor Taylor
Councillor Painter, can I just on that one, if Councillor Hawkin has anything to add? Councillor Hawkin.
So, Leader, I am joining you via phone. My laptop has died, so it's a challenge. I think Adam has covered that point. I probably will attempt to come back in to say something on this item later.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkin. So I'll pop Councillor Hawkin down on the list to come in later. Councillor Painter, if you'd like to pick up on the leisure side. Both Councillor Taylor and Harris and Councillor Ethel-Gibbons may wish to come in as well, and then we'll move on to other Cabinet members in the Saints Trails.
Certainly, thank you. Yes, certainly with leisure, we did make a provision of £3.5 million at risk, and so Councillor Taylor's absolutely right. At page 805 of the last Cabinet papers, you'll see there is a risk provision in there for the next financial year of 3.5 million, and that is there because it is a risk, and we know that GLL, along with all other leisure providers, have had massive impacts because they have been forced to close. I know they have been voluntarily topping up the 20% furlough for their staff. I think we've seen at least 2 other leisure providers have gone bankrupt because of the situation. GLL has asked all of its contracts and all of its sort of contractors with other councils and other bodies to make sure that they can work with them to sustain them. So, you know, the money is at risk. You know, we know that we lent 20 million at the start of the contract to make sure that our buildings, which we still own, all our leisure centres, make sure that those buildings were fit for purpose and were reinvested in. So, you know, that work is still ongoing. GLL have had a pause to the repayments on that loan, but they are still looking to repay the whole of that loan as they go through. I think, you know, the funding has been relatively complex as far as trying to make sure that we secure our position as a council and make sure any money is secured as much as it possibly can be in the unlikely event that GLL should cease trading. But clearly that's a risk, and it's something that you know, we've worked hard to make sure that we're not giving money as a grant. We're giving, you know, monies as loans, albeit at risk, you know, to make sure that we can keep keeping our leisure centres open. I know James Curry, GLL's manager down here in Cornwall, has been on the radio and certainly was very active this week, talking about how he wants, you know, clearly it's very difficult for them. He clearly wants the leisure centres to be open as soon as they can be in a COVID safe way. They've got the roadmap for leisure centre reopening is there and ready to go. So, you know, we are hoping that they'll get reopened, people will get back to using them again, and you know, clearly you know, things will move forward. But we do have lots of uncertainties over exactly what will happen. We don't know yet if the government's roadmap will be realised on the dates that they've published, you know, right the way through to the end of June, to hopefully have no social distancing by then, which then obviously enables gyms, swimming pools and other leisure areas to be fully reopened. So it is a very, very challenging time for the sector, but we are certainly working with them to make sure that they can reopen and make sure that they're in an ability, they have the ability to make the profits they need to repay the loans that we've given them over time. But I'm happy to, you know, provide a further update if councillors would like it, and certainly Ms Tracy Langley, the Senior Finance Officer, would be happy to go through the details of what we put in place and how we've accounted for those figures right the way through the contract. But hopefully that answers the question, and we'll be happy to obviously provide more information if it's needed.
Thank you, Councillor Painter. And of course the cost base of reopening is going to be greater in terms of social distancing and the like still being in place if reopening is allowed as expected. So not only is there the challenge of all that you've described, but the challenge of reopening in a different context before we get to a position at some point in the future where they can be operated in the same way as they were before the pandemic. It is an area of great concern. I've got the Local Government Association's Culture, Tourism and Sport Board this afternoon. Leisure is a key item on that meeting. We've got Nigel Huddleston, the Minister for Sport, coming, and Sport England, and the funding that has been received so far is for a very specific time period to support leisure outside of where it's directly operated by councils, and then there's loss of income support, although not at 100%. So councils across the country are really struggling with leisure provision, and that's going to be really important for our residents in terms of their health and well-being and getting back to health. So a really challenging area for us, but also across the country. The next item was around the Saints Trails. Councillor Brown may, if you'd like to respond to that, but Mr Mason was also named and may want to come in. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. And understandably, Councillor Harris did question this at audit. And subsequently, I afforded him the information that 16 out of 43 landowners had agreed heads of terms with us. I recognise that that isn't contractually binding, but it's the next step along the process to getting a contract. But as you can imagine, any land negotiations in the middle of a pandemic are incredibly difficult. It's very, very difficult to do land negotiations virtually. It needs to be a sort of a face-to-face meeting, which is the reason why Highways England actually agreed to defer the funding deadline from 2022 to 2023. And both myself and the Strategic Director did at the time give confirmation that we will be delivering the project on time and on budget. And I see no reason to change from that. And I'm confident that we will do that. It's a huge project, £19 million project, and a lot of work to do yet, but we're progressing very, very well. And a lot of work has been completed, as I said earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. And Mr Mason.
Thank you, Leader. Not a lot more to add other than we are constantly looking at the resources and capacity that we've got to deliver this. As Councillor Brown has said, this is a wide-ranging and complex project with a number of land acquisitions to make. Land acquisitions are the main problematic area in respect of this application, because actually in terms of doing the works, it's relatively low impact in terms of the engineering operations to create the trail. So the main complexity of this project is around getting all of those landowners to agree and transferring the land. So we are also increasing our capacity in terms of the project management of this project, and we are working almost daily with our property team in respect of overseeing those crucial land acquisitions. But I can confirm that we are making progress. We have made progress since I went to the audit committee, and we will be going back to the audit committee as required towards the end of April, and we will describe then, and I'm hopeful that we will be able to demonstrate that we have shown progress. But the commitment I made at the audit committee, and as Councillor Brown has stated, is to deliver this within the budget. I am confident that we have mitigations that we can take if some cost areas are more than we would have anticipated. There is money in the budget for contingency, and there are strategies in respect of lowering the cost of certain aspects of the route if we need to take those. So I am confident that we can deliver this in budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So welcome Councillor Toms to the meeting. We're on agenda item number 6. I expect the two items that you'll be interested in are 7 and 8. So just to welcome you to the meeting. So Councillor Taylor's indicated a couple of times that she'd like to come in, and Councillor Kirkham. Again, if there's no one else indicating after Councillors Taylor's and Kirkham, I'll draw a line. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you for allowing me to come back in. I just want to have it clarified that the loan that is providing to GLL, is it actually going to be used, or part of it going to be used for topping up the furlough scheme? And I do have to come back on another point that, you know, when our Chancellor made his announcement in the spending review in November, the 220 million was going to be used as a pilot for areas, of which obviously Cornwall was one of those selected, and it was a pilot scheme to look at how the SPF scheme is going to operate. And I do really need to confirm as well that, you know, the government has said that UK funding will at least match EU receipts on average, and that will reach around about 1.5 billion a year. So just clarification in case there is any misunderstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And my clarification is that government have consistently said that Cornwall would be no worse off, and that means £100 million worth of funding in the year 2021. Cabinet members, I can see that you're wanting to come in. I'll bring you in after we've had the questions from the wider membership. So Councillor Taylor just wanting that confirmation on the loan, and Councillor Kirkland, please.
Hello, thank you very much for letting me come in as well. Yeah, I asked about GLL customer scrutiny yesterday. We've lent them so about 23.5 million. I've always found that difficult because they never in the contract agreed to pay the foundation living wage, and it was a 25-year contract, and I've always found that difficult to reconcile, and we were going to renegotiate the contract. So they now have loans from us for 23.5 million. My question yesterday was specifically about the security for the COVID-based loan. Did we have any security? Do we have any charges over any property? Is there any kind of actual concrete security we've got, or confirmation and guarantees that that money will definitely be used solely in Cornwall and not in the rest of their operation? And are there any conditions attached to those loans on reopening the leisure centres that we've got here? The reason I brought it up yesterday specifically was because it was mentioned in these papers. We talk about writing off potential bad debt to GLL. Now, would that include the 20 million as well as the 3.5 million? And also the papers yesterday talked about the possibility of loaning more money to GLL. And that did concern me. So I'd like confirmation if that actually is being discussed, if more Cornwall Council money is going to GLL. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I responded earlier, this is in the context of all councils really struggling to keep leisure services afloat and ready to be reopened. So Councillor Painter, Ms Langley may want to come in, and Councillor Ethorne-Gibbons. Councillor Painter, please.
Thank you, Leader. And yeah, thank you for those questions. I think we need to think back to before GLL were running our leisure services, that the total amount that we were putting into to fund leisure across Cornwall, we made a saving when GLL came in of just under 3.5 million each and every year on our property costs and our management charges for running our leisure centres. So that was a huge saving for the council to make, but clearly GLL needed to hit their targets as far as memberships and people coming through the door to make sure that our suite of leisure provision across Cornwall could wash its own face, allow GLL to turn the profits they need to invest back into to themselves. They do clearly have some central costs, as well as obviously the vast majority of the costs of the local costs, employing people across Cornwall to run their leisure centres. So yeah, that's where they started from. Clearly, coming into a pandemic is not a great time. We've already spent time discussing that across the country. Things have been very, very difficult. It's one area that has not had support yet directly from government. I know we're still working on it, and as the leader said, still working with the Minister for Sport and Sport England to look at the money that was top sliced off COVID grant back last year was going to be used purely to support leisure, and that money has not been made available yet. So we bid into that fund, we hope to be successful, and we hope to get money back into the council that can be used to offset those costs. It's clearly up to GLL how they use the money that we gave them. Some of it was restricted as to being a loan as far as how they use that money. So it wasn't just given to them. Exactly the same as the money that we gave for capital works, in excess of 20 million, which is to be used on capital works for our own buildings that we still have the freehold for. So that's buildings that are still our property. So if GLL walked away tomorrow, those would still be our buildings, and we'd have to look at how we can provide leisure across those 13 leisure centres that we've got across Cornwall. So we made a commitment to say we wouldn't close any of them, and that's what we were working with GLL with, to say that these need to stay open. We did a review. We're currently in the middle of a review, looking again at our sites, looking at how we can take them forward and make them sustainable. And it'll be the same types of reviews that will be happening across the country, because everybody's in the same sort of position with leisure and the impact that it's had because of the pandemic. So that's really where we are, but it is entirely up to GLL around paying the 20% furlough and how they choose to fund that. And equally, as far as the money that we've spent, as far as the grants and loans that we gave them last year, that was very much to enable the reopening. So we're looking again, they're ready to reopen. They've said they're going to reopen all sites in Cornwall very soon. So that's great news. So that's what we're working to make sure that happens. I think the issue around the living wage was one that, because the contract was already signed with them before we made the commitment, we have made a £10 million commitment within this administration, and that £10 million has gone into pretty much 100% of it's gone directly into the pockets of Cornish residents that are working mainly in domiciliary care areas within adult social care, but also in other areas and other contracts where we've made sure that happens. We've been working with GLL because in some contracts they have been paying the real living wage, and it's something that we're encouraging them to do. So we'll continue to work with them to try and make sure that they are hitting those targets for the real living wage. But clearly, in the middle of a pandemic, when almost all their staff are on furlough, it's then very, very difficult to then say, well, actually, by the way, we need you to pay the extra money for the living wage. So I think we need to get the leisure centres open. We'll continue to work with them to make sure that they all stay open, and then we'll obviously be looking at the leisure review to see where leisure goes in Cornwall over the coming years. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Comprehensive. Councillor Ethan Gibbons or Ms Langley, anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so, Leader. The report sets out on page 69 the situation, then it's right to take a prudent approach. One thing I would stress, as it said in paragraph 1.5, is that we are seeking support from leisure providers via the National Leisure Recovery Fund, and that is important. We do want to get our message across that we've got specific needs in Cornwall, and we hope that at a national level they will recognise that and come back to us. Clearly, in terms of the day-to-day operations and the support that we've given to GLL in this area has been fully covered by the Deputy Leader, and there's nothing further I can say at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Ethan Gibbons. Ms Langley.
Just to say that I'm more than happy to provide a statement of all of the quite complicated transactions, as Councillor Painter and Councillor Ethan Gibbons have mentioned, and I'm quite happy to do that afterwards.
Thank you. And so no further members from the wider membership have indicated. So I'll go to Councillor Hawken first, please, and then Councillor Dwelly. Councillor Hawken, please.
Thank you, Leader. So I know on this paper there was a couple of things that I would want to highlight. One is that we register the risks to our communities of the impact of the pandemic will be lasting. We haven't necessarily been focused on the elderly, but it's important we see the needs of children as we recover. And the other is that health inequalities will be crucial going forward. I know that there was some discussion at scrutiny around what we needed for a strong, effective, functioning public health. So it's with great disappointment that I'm registering the news that the public health grant allocation for 21-22 will be less than we received in 2016-17. So the pressure on local public health services will be huge, and this is extremely disappointing news in the context with which we will be going forward, trying to tackle those health inequalities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawken. Councillor Dwelly, please.
Thank you, Leader. I've got a few updates which I think will be useful for members and the public if they're watching on the issue of funding for Cornwall. If I could start, please, with the letter I have sent to Robert Jenrick, Secretary of State, on the decision to make Cornwall Tier 2, what you might call levelling down. We haven't had a reply yet, but I do want to update members to say that we are exploring judicial review. We are looking at whether there is scope to question the methodology, and I know we're not the only local authority surprised to not be in Tier 1, and that will be explored. I'm not going to speculate on what the decisions were in terms of how the funds were allocated, but we think there are possible grounds for a mistake to have been made, notwithstanding any motivation. So that's our next steps on that. We're actively looking at that, and I hope that the government looks again and puts us into Tier 1. I do want to respond to Councillor Taylor, the leader of the Conservative group, who, although she didn't ask a question on these matters, she did make some statements which I need to correct because they were largely incorrect. In terms of, first of all, I think to say that Cornwall isn't getting level 1, Tier 1 of levelling up because we've had, quote, huge investment is a rather strange message to be sending. It's effectively, if you like, a Whitehall, a Conservative government message to Cornwall rather than Cornwall's message to government. I do hope Councillor Taylor will actually help lobby us to get more investment in Cornwall and not to say we've had enough, so it's okay to be in Tier 2. Well, that, if you'll forgive me, is the politics there. But let me get to the facts. Shared Prosperity Fund, as Councillor Taylor says, is different to Levelling Up Fund, absolutely. And the Community Renewal Fund is the pilot year for this fund, absolutely right, 220 million. But let's be clear here, this is for the year beginning in April. In that year, we were told by the Prime Minister that we would have the same money as we had from Europe, that's 100 million. I can reveal to those who don't know this already that we have been told we will get 3 million, not 100 million for that year. Now, why does this first year matter? Well, I guess two words would be COVID and Brexit. This is the worst possible time for that amount of funding and support for a poor place like Cornwall to go down to 3 million. And to rub salt into the wounds, we know that in Devon, where there are 8 local authorities, they will have 3 million times 8, which is 24 million. So I cannot see how we can look at what's coming up in the next year as anything other than disastrous. And I really can't apply the words huge investment to that. So please, can we please get our facts right? This coming year, Cornwall will get 3 million, as currently set out by government, from the pilot of the replacement for European funding. Had we stayed in the EU, which we're not, or had Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister's pledge, been carried through, we would have had 100 million. I don't think I need to explain why there's a rather big gap there. And as for the future, yes, we hope we'll get 100 million a year, but from my calculations, given that we only ever used to get 3.8% of the UK structural funds from the EU in Cornwall, 3.8%, my calculation is that at very, very best, we will be looking at 58 million, not 100 million. So I think it's fair to say that unless we see otherwise, Cornwall is being levelled down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dwelly. So no one else has indicated to come in on this item. It's been proposed and seconded. So Democratic Services Officer, if we could move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mikey Thorne-Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And Councillor Rob Watchell.
For.
Thank you. I can confirm all members have voted unanimously for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. So the next item is agenda item number 7, the Adult Social Care Transformation Update Report, Q3 2020 to 21. Councillor Rothschild to lead, please.
Thank you, Leader. This quarterly adult social care transformation update report covers the period September to December 2020 and sets out progress being made on the adult social care transformation, as well as giving an update on the prevailing challenges with regard to pressures on the health and care system in the quarter and beyond. The key messages and themes within it are: this continues to be an unprecedented time for health and care services, with pressure continuing throughout the quarter, with increasing COVID infection rates and an escalation of the numbers of residents in Cornwall needing support, while providers and the health system locally began to show the impact on their staff in greater numbers. The quarter saw a range of measures commissioned to manage the surge in demand for health and social care services and preparations for the management of high numbers of outbreaks in the community. Adult social care played a key role in both actions, and in respect of the outbreak management, developed with health partners a multidisciplinary approach which ensured that we manage people in their homes through virtual wards. This work and the technology enhancements we made in the first wave of the pandemic supported the hospital to ensure that critical ICU capacity was available. While there are signs that the peak infection levels seen in January are now abating, there continues to be pressure on the capacity and availability of care services, with greater numbers of people coming into and staying in care provision than normal. We expect that the tail demand from the latest wave of the pandemic will continue to generate additional pressure in the community until at least early May 21. Despite this pressure, progress has continued to be made on the transformation programme. With greater clarity about how it all fits together, the ambitions and purpose of the work streams and the linkages to the other major work in progress in the health and care system through the Embrace programme. The recruitment process to the operational management structure has been successful, with posts taken up across all three areas and one of chief social worker appointed along with 3 locality managers, which has strengthened social work, knowledge, skills and professional leadership. The diagnostic review of working age adults has completed, and details of this and other parts of the programme are set out in the report appendices. As with previous quarters, it is clear that staff and partners have risen and continue to rise to the challenge, and despite the past year being dominated by our response to the pandemic, we can reflect on some of the achievements of the past 4 years, such as the groundwork for an extra care development that will provide 750 state-of-the-art units that, in addition to the improvement of outcomes for the residents of them, will provide regeneration and jobs. Joint commissioning and a joint market position statement, increased capacity and re-ablement and joint home care and supported living solution contracts that contribute towards millions of savings and reduction in delays in hospital. Through the recommission of home care, SLS and care homes, an estimated workforce of 10,000 who directly deliver care are now paid the foundation living wage, receive mileage and training as part of the council's commitment to the people who deliver frontline care. Demand for services is ever increasing, but shifting to a strengths-based model of assessment and care is an important step in reducing the intensity of provision that is gaining ground and importance to the wider health and care system. This shift has also been enabled by a significant increase in home care capacity, with more than 30% in the last year alone. It is really pleasing also, therefore, that resident satisfaction with adult services in Cornwall has shown marked improvements in the recent survey. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all adult social care staff and our partners for their support and their exceptional response, not only in respect of COVID, but in continuing to provide our everyday services. And I'll go to the recommendations 1 and 2 set out on pages 131 and 132. Recommendation 1, that the details set out in this report and the demonstration of progress with adult social care transformation be recognised. And on page 132, recommendation 2, that the outturn position in Q3 be noted alongside the commentary about the emerging full year forecast and the potential impact on years 2021-22. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Rochell, and Councillor Hawkins, second, please.
Thank you. Councillor Rochell has covered the report's contents comprehensively, and I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. No one from Cabinet with hands raised at the moment, so I'll go to the wider membership. Councillor Kirkham, please.
Hello, yes, thank you very much. Firstly, I want to say what a brilliant job under a lot of pressure that our adult social care department are doing. It's made very difficult by the situation that they've been put in, really. We still have a situation where there are parts of an integrated care system which are naturally in conflict with each other, both financially and in other ways. It makes Helen Charlesworth-May's job incredibly difficult to do. Now, we've got conflict over some of the assessed to discharge money. We've got conflict over the supported living services bill, and I'm not sure how the negotiations are going about that. But that kind of thing, although it's an internal difficulty and something that we need to be sorting out with the NHS down here, just shows what a state health and social care is in at the moment. The white paper doesn't help. The white paper deals with the NHS solely. The white paper doesn't look at social care. It doesn't look at public health. How we can run a successful integrated care system with the parts of the system actually collaborating rather than fighting over funding, which is what is happening at the moment, seems very difficult to understand. We're supposed to have an integrated care system by next year. I mean, can the portfolio holder see how these conflicts can be resolved and how this can be sorted out if we're not working with separate pots of funding at odds with each other?
Thank you, Councillor Kirkham. Councillor Toms next, the Chair of the relevant Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Toms, please.
Thank you, Leader, and I'm glad to join the meeting today. Firstly, I should pay credit to both Rob and to Sally for the work they've put in over the last 4 years. Children's services are outstanding, and Rob's done a great job within the social care side. It is one of the most difficult situations that they find themselves at the moment, because at the end of this 4-year period, the last year has been extremely stressful for everybody. But here's a saying that was something that was said at scrutiny by Jackie Pendleton. You know, when we were talking about how they were finding it difficult to work together, she actually said that although they had their differences, you know, it was incumbent on them to work together to bring the best results for the people of Cornwall. And that just shows you that the people that are involved in this have taken great credit and worked together over the last 4 years, and it helps them get more things done. But as Councillor Kirkham has just said, there are still massive difficulties, the funding, and whatever happens and whoever's in charge in the next council needs to be able to work across party, across organisation, and make sure that the integrated care system is finally brought to bear on the organisations, and the integration of not just the funds but the workforce as well, to help take out some of those situations. I think Alan Charlesworth-May has done a very good job on, you know, the system since she's been here, and I know that Suzanne Wixie and like Rachel Wrigglesworth in public health, they've had to throw out the rule book, if you like, and start again in the last 12 months, and that's great credit to them. And you know, the people that have worked with them, like Kate Shields and Phil Confrew, you know, they have worked well together, and it's been outstanding what they've achieved. And like Rob highlighted, the Foundation Living Wage has put more onto GDP than a lot of other things, and that's great credit to people working together and achieving together, and the commissioning systems that have been put in place have been great as well. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much for letting me speak, please.
Thank you, Councillor Toms. Absolutely agree that social care will continue to be a key focus for the next council. Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm trying to make my camera work as well. I apologise. Yeah, this is a nightmare portfolio. it's not going to get any easier. You know, I hope the integrated care system will help. As Councillor Tom says, if ever there's an issue that needs sorting out cross-party, this is it. You know, but there are clearly some messages in here. There's a couple of bits that bother me, and if you turn to paragraphs 218 and 219, and this is about the under accruals for past year's invoices, etc. You know, mistakes can happen, but what bothers me is we've known about this problem for a long time now. So when you read a note saying a working group chaired jointly, etc., is tasked with managing the investigation, the group has been reviewing the detail of various lists and is preparing a full report, I'm not sure who it goes to be delivered by the end of March. It is a real concern that from the top down, we've not got this sorted and grasped it by the what's it much quicker than this. That's my sort of first point or question, really. You know, why haven't we done that? Paragraph 2.5, I'm just slightly worried. There's a reference right at the end. The inability to be able to record safeguarding as part of the Mosaic work steps, etc. Do we have a problem with Mosaic? Because as I understand it within the wider council, adult social care has a problem with the Mosaic system, whereas children's uses it very well. And then my final comment, or my final question, if you like, is in paragraph 222 and 223, we're talking about making redundancies and savings, etc. There's a need to make further staffing savings for next year. Then it says continuing to reduce frontline assessment spend on staffing is likely to see an overall increase in care costs. So as a typical Conservative, you cut everything. But here's one where you're saying, Rob twitched then, but here's one where you're saying, hang on, we're going to cut something short term to make a budget work, but in fact it's going to cost us money in the medium term. Probably can't be answered today, but it doesn't seem to make sense to me, does that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Rothschild, if you'd like to respond to the first three, then we'll move on to Councillor Ellenbrook and anyone else who wants to indicate. Councillor Rothschild, please.
So thank you, Leader. First, start off by saying thank you to Councillors Kirkham and Toms for your kind remarks, but also to the support as individuals and as members of the Health Scrutiny Committee, because Councillor Harris's observation, I have to say, isn't far from the truth. It's been, we knew it was going to be a challenge 4 years ago. It was going to be a challenge, and certainly that has panned out. I've been absolutely at pains to avoid any political stance whenever we talk about health and social care. I chaired scrutiny in the last health scrutiny in the last administration, and I made my point then that this is way too important to be kind of to be at the whim of a political dimension. And respect to my colleagues who've worked with me, my councillor colleagues, that's not been an issue, and as long as I'm involved, it won't be. So we may have individual opinions, but as a collective, we've worked to make the system work that we've got. So just to go to background, to respond to Councillor Kirkham, we've had 2 meetings with the Clinical Commissioning Group now, identified what the issues are. Some of those issues have been resolved, and there is a commitment to resolve them before the life of this administration, and that's an agreement between the CCG and ourselves. It's not us just saying we want it sorted out. There's an agreement, we'll do that, and we have an agreed way forward and how we're going to achieve that. So I'm more than optimistic that those serious disagreements, but I think it would be overstating the case to say it's affected the relationship. Yes, there are issues that need resolving, financial issues, and we're working on them, but I think the working relationship that we've got with the CCG remains robust. In Helen Charlesworth May, we've got a fantastic bridge between the two organisations that's worked very, very well. So I'm confident that whatever is thrown up in the future in terms of the ICS, certainly the relationship between adult social care and the CCG is robust and will meet whatever challenge comes up. In terms of the ICS itself, it might be appropriate for me to bring in Helen Charlesworth May, because again she straddles both organisations and is working towards developing the ICS. So if I could bring Helen in, and then I'll come back to Councillor Toms if that's okay.
Thank you. Ms Charlesworth May, please.
Thank you. So as councillors will know, the government has just produced its white paper on the setting up of integrated care systems, and that flags some of the inherent difficulties we know exist between health and social care, and some of the statutory changes that will need to be made if health and social care are to work together more easily. Those issues are not about local relationships or about local responses. Those are the inherent contradictions within the statutory frameworks within which adult social care and the NHS operate. I think it is right to flag that unless we see a more wholesale review of adult social care and a statutory underpinning that both funds adult social care and makes clear the long-term expectations about how adult social care will operate, those difficulties will continue and will always therefore be subject to local negotiation. I think we have made progress over the last 3 years, but without a shadow of a doubt it remains difficult. And some of the issues that Councillor Kirkham and Councillor Rochell refer to are long-standing and historical issues that have not been resolved for very, very many years. And for us to be in a position where we now feel able to resolve them through agreement, negotiation does itself indicate a change in the position we find ourselves in, and the reflection of the work that's gone in over the past 3 to 4 years to improve things between health and care.
Thank you. Councillor Rochell, please.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think I've already answered Councillor Toms's point, and again, thanks to him as Chairman of Health Scrutiny for his support. I think scrutiny's role in monitoring the performance of adult social care and being supportive has been outstanding over the life of the administration, and quite frankly, without their support, and invariably it's been unanimous in whatever projects we've put before them, we wouldn't have made the progress that we've made, that's for sure. For Councillor Harris, thank you. Nightmare portfolio, yes, I had a full head of brown hair when we started 4 years ago, and the evidence of the impact of 4 years of being in this chair is pretty evident. If I could, I'll bring Tracy, the Section 118 officer in, 15 officer in, to answer about the accruals if I could. But to touch on the point around reducing frontline assessments, I think that's a worst case scenario, you know, and there has been from the beginning a need to make savings inevitably, despite the fact that there's been substantial investment in adult social care over the life of the administration. If we just even set aside the impact of COVID on the system, the demand for our day-to-day work has escalated in pretty much in line with what our expectations were, but it's effectively unaffordable. And again, you know, there's this constant spectre in the background of wanting to see a long-term funding solution to adult social care. And I'm not being political in this point. It's a real concern, and it's a concern that's expressed across this political spectrum. But with that spectre constantly being there, and short-term solution financial solutions being put forward make it almost impossible to plan beyond 1 year. Although we try to, you know, as a council, we plan for 4 years. Pretty much with adult social care, you're almost planning in the dark with you know, one-off settlements being made. You know, this year, for example, the 3% increase in the precept ring fence to adult social care is an illustration of that. So, you know, hopefully once we've got the pandemic behind us, there'll be more bandwidth among civil servants, for example, to allow us to secure that long-term funding settlement. So specifically then, the point about frontline staff, yes, indeed, that's the worst case scenario, that if indeed you do reduce the frontline staff, then long term there is an increase, there will be an increase in packages, or the cost of packages of care. So it's not our intention to do that, but it's an illustration of that would be an inevitable consequence of that. At the same time, we're really mindful that we have got to make savings this year. And I think I pay tribute to the work that Keith Cheeseman's doing in terms of looking at our functions apart from the front line, in terms of how we can make sure that that's much more effective and efficient, and we can achieve the savings targets that we've been set. So if I could bring the Section 1.5 officer in to talk about the accruals, and then probably it's more appropriate to bring Helen Charlesworth-May back in to talk about Mosaic, if I could. So Section 1.5 officer first, please.
Thank you. Ms Langley.
Thank you, Councillor German and Councillor Rochwell. So in terms of the accruals position, so we have got a group set up, and they are working to an upgraded set of protocols for looking at the accruals, and that is just a general accounting process. I suppose the issue in adult social care is that we are looking at every single case line by line to look at the individual position for each case, and that just takes quite a lot of time, because where we want to get to is a baseline position that is absolutely accurate. And as I say, there are thousands of cases. It's, you know, we're not just talking 2 or 3 here. There are thousands. So doing that work is A, taking quite a lot of time, but B, will give us the baseline that we need going forward.
Thank you, Ms Langley. Ms Charlesworth-May, if you'd like to come in, you might want to comment on the accruals as well. But
yes, no, that's fine. So I'll deal with all 3 elements if you don't mind. So start with the staffing bit. As Councillor Rochwell pointed out in his introduction, we have restructured the top layer of the adult social care operational function during the last year and made some new appointments. We always planned to do a restructure in 2 phases, but because of the pandemic, we clearly have not pursued a restructure in respect of frontline operational staff during this year. That will be something that must be done during 21-22. In order to do that, we need to do 2 things. We need to design a new model of social work for adult social care, and we need to undertake a productivity piece to ensure that we have the right level of caseload per person, and that we are seeing consistent performance across the entirety of our workforce. My expectation as a result of doing that is that we will see more social workers holding cases, and in the long term, lower levels of expenditure within our commissioned care service. So in some respects, you could describe us moving from what has been an adult social care model around care assessment to an adult social care model that looks a bit more like children's services, actually, whereby social workers are seen as a professional intervention and service in their own right. In that context, it is not my expectation that we will reduce the number of social workers, social care staff at the front line in adult social care. However, as was set out in the budget papers at the last cabinet, we are doing extensive work around our back office, and whilst we are currently holding 20% vacancies, it is likely that there will be further staff reductions in those areas. So then to go on to Mosaic, and as I've just said, my expectation is that the model of service will take us towards a model that looks more like children's services. Historically, adult social care and children's social care in the way they function have had very little in common. We have had a mosaic system that therefore services the two types of social care differentially. We have now disaggregated mosaic into a children's version of mosaic and an adult's version of mosaic. And as a result of that, we will be able to set up the adult version of mosaic in a way that better meets the needs of adult social care than has been the case hitherto. However, I would make one further comment. The technology on which mosaic is built is old technology, and it is inevitable that we will have to think about what is the information technology need for adults and children's social care over the next 2 to 3 years, and that will be a really important strategic bit of thinking that we will need to do within the context of the Council's broader transformation programme. And finally, to pick up on the accruals piece, absolutely to reinforce Tracy's point, we have agreed a new methodology for accruals in adult social care, which will be focused on individual packages rather than on a calculation of what we think might be the right position. We are going through every package on a line-by-line basis. We have done so already twice this year, and that is absolutely necessary because of the complexity around the grant funding arrangements this year because of the pandemic, so that we can be assured we're claiming the right level of grant and only grant to which we are entitled. And that complexity has been added to by the change in grant terms and conditions in respect of NHS funding of adult social care over the last 12 months. And nationally, there are conversations going on around that at the moment. And I was party to a regional conversation this morning around ongoing negotiations in respect of NHS funding for adult social care into 21-22 in order to ensure that we're able to maintain support to our NHS, but also to ensure that there will be funding available next year for the exceptional levels of activity we are seeing as a result of the pandemic, and which were never forecast because they arise from the pandemic.
On mute, Julian.
Thank you. Anything you wanted to add before we move on to Councillor Ellenbrook?
No, that's great. They're pretty good at what they do.
Thank you. So, colleagues, your chance to get your axe in the box while Councillor Ellenbrook's asking her question. Councillor Ellenbrook, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I have to say, as a member of the Adult Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, it's been not only a roller coaster ride, but a real eye-opener. I have learnt so much, and it has been very refreshing that by and large, as with the other Overview and Scrutiny Committee that I am on, that party politics has by and large been left at the door of the meeting, either virtual or physical, and that is really, really important. You know, particularly issues with adult social care, they go way beyond politics. They are something that, if we want a level playing field for our residents, has to be addressed. But what my concern is on page 134, and it might be because I'm not a financier by any stretch of the imagination, I'm slightly concerned that on paragraph 2.8 it talks about the new conditions and the care, particularly if people aren't assessed for care within 6 weeks, costs incurred by the council due to delay in care assessments will have to be borne by the council. I mean, do we think that's going to be something that we are going to have to deal with, and have we got any money in the pot for that? And then at paragraph 211, there's a piece here which I must admit I don't quite understand, about not local authorities should pool existing funding already allocated for hospital discharge, but that Cornwall Council decided not to set such a baseline, and now it's been challenged. And again, is that going to give us some more cost problems going forward?
Thank you, Councillor Ellenbrook. So no one else has indicated, so I'll draw a line there. Councillor Rochall and Councillor Charlesworth, Ms. Charlesworth may might like to come back in as well. Councillor Rochall.
Actually, I think it's wiser to go straight to Helen Charlesworth May.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So in response to Councillor Ellenbrook's question, that is precisely the issue I was just flagging earlier. The grant terms and conditions have changed, and that has created an issue nationally as well as locally. And one of the significant areas of difference between the NHS and local authorities on this is the issue of assessment. So the NHS has assumed that the completion of a continuing healthcare assessment leading to a decision not to award continuing healthcare automatically creates an entitlement to adult social care. This, of course, is not correct, and the Care Act statutorily sets out local authorities' responsibilities, and the Care Act takes primacy over COVID Act legislation. So those are the very issues we are currently in negotiation on locally and nationally. I am content that we have arrived at a reasonable and manageable position locally, but that is still within the confines of disagreement over the statutory position nationally. The issue in respect of a baseline again goes back to reading of grant conditions in April of this year. We are very, very clear that the grant interpretation at the beginning of this year enabled us to make a decision not to pool funds and not to set a baseline. That has subsequently changed, and that has subsequently changed in the context of the national position around the discharge to assess grant, which is overspending nationally in the rounds of £300 million. So these are ongoing conversations. I would just like to conclude, Leader, by noting that the difficulties of this portfolio have been raised by councillors. It is incumbent upon me to say that being Director of Adult Social Care is probably the best job in a local authority, and whilst it may be complex and difficult, there isn't another job that I would do. Thank you.
Muted, Julian.
Thank you. Councillor Rochall, anything in conclusion from yourself?
No, not at all, except to say that it almost sounded like Helen's comments at the end were reflecting what I'd said right at the beginning, that I didn't actually want any other portfolio apart
from... Councillor Rochall appears to have frozen, so we'll just we're going to move to the vote, so we'll just hopefully I'll talk for a moment and hopefully Councillor Rochall will unfreeze. Ms. Charlesworth, oh, there you go. Go on, Rob. We got to this being the only portfolio that you wanted.
Absolutely, and I I wouldn't have changed it for the world. It's been an amazing 4 years, and again, thanks to adult social care colleagues and my fellow councillors and cabinet colleagues, because frankly, without everybody working together, we wouldn't have made the strides forward that we had. So I'll just go back then to the recommendations set out pages 131 and 132 and formally propose those. We adopt those recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Rochell. So in terms of those systemic challenges that the strategic director talked about, that's absolutely the case. It's also the case that we've got systemic challenges through geography and peripherality, and the NHS as a top-down command and control structure is never going to work as well as it could do in Cornwall if we were fully integrated between health and social care at a Cornwall and Isles of Scilly level. So from my point of view, the only way that we're going to solve those structural challenges is by having full devolution of the NHS to Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and really properly being able to integrate the NHS and health and social care. So Democratic Services Officer, we've had the resolution recommendations proposed and seconded. Can we move to the vote, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mike Heathorn-Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And Councillor Rob Watson.
For.
Thank you. I can confirm that all members have voted unanimously for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. So the next agenda item is agenda item number 8, Priorities for Cornwall Performance Report 2017 to 2021, which I'm happy to introduce. It's fitting that the final agenda item on the last Cabinet meeting for this 4 years of the Council reflects on the progress made in delivering the priorities for Cornwall agreed in 2017. I will invite Cabinet members to highlight achievements set out in the performance report, but before I do, some reflections from myself. As the performance report demonstrates, despite significant challenges faced and against a backdrop of political instability at government level, the Council has not wavered in delivering the priorities for Cornwall over the course of the last 4 years. Even during the last 12 months, which have been severely testing, the Council has continued to deliver on the commitments made in 2017 in response to what residents said mattered most to them. I think Councillor Brown, your camera is on, perhaps something's going on there. So what did residents say that mattered most to them? Improving health and care services to engender a healthy Cornwall, providing a much needed affordable homes for Cornwall, tackling climate change and improving the economy to create a green and prosperous Cornwall, investing millions of pounds in connecting Cornwall and ensuring a vibrant democratic Cornwall through double devolution. The performance report for 4 members charts our progress with achievements across the 5 priorities and how the Council has delivered on our aim of working with the people of Cornwall and using our resources wisely to protect and enhance our unique environment, create more homes and jobs for residents, and ensure that everyone can live well and safely together. Central to this aim has been ensuring we've been inclusive, that we've taken a one and all approach to improving the quality of life for everyone in Cornwall and protecting and supporting the most vulnerable members of our community. Given I'm sorry, I'm going to have a look to see who's not muted and mute them because I can't cope with the rustling in the background. Oh, Councillor Ephraim Gibbons, there we go. We'll see whether there's anyone else. There we go. I'll carry on. Given our efforts to serve the people of Cornwall and deliver on what matters most to them, it's pleasing that the Council's biannual resident survey have shown an improvement in the levels of public satisfaction with the organisation since 2017. It's particularly gratifying to see double-digit increases in 3 success measures that are determined by residents, with the most recent survey showing the percentage of residents satisfied with the way that council runs things now stands at 69% compared with 46% 4 years ago. The organisation has come a long way since 2017 and risen to the significant challenges of COVID-19 and climate change head on. That's not to say that we haven't built upon the legacy of the previous council, and indeed councils, absolutely, we stand on the shoulders of those that have gone before us. There's no doubt in my mind that the council is as well placed as any in the country to lead the recovery from the pandemic, and in doing so create a cleaner, greener, fairer and more inclusive Cornwall. This is testament to the incredible effort and dedication of fellow members, council officers and our partners, and as leader of the council it gives me great pleasure to propose the recommendation as laid out, which I will just read. So the recommendation is the Priorities for Cornwall Performance Report 2017 to 2021 is endorsed, and the efforts of members, officers and partners in contributing to the delivery of the Council's aims over the past 4 years be acknowledged and commended. That's my introduction, colleagues. Councillor Dwelly, if you'd like to second, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Delighted to. And as many of you know, I've only been on Cabinet for a fairly short period and haven't always been in the administration. But I'd like to open by saying that I believe councillors of all parties, including at least half of the Conservatives, know that we're doing a good job in this administration, and they tell me so. So that's great. And I think we need to be honest here that we have done a lot of really good work. And if you look back, I'm just going to concentrate on a few highlights for me. I've been a councillor for 8 years, and the transformation in what we do, despite austerity and cuts, despite all the challenges, has been really quite phenomenal. And it's not just councillors, it's down to extremely hard-working officers who've done amazing things. And if I could give some examples, please. First of all, I've got to mention that I'm proud of how this authority has dealt with COVID. We've not only mobilised our staff to rapidly respond to people's needs, but we've also, as you will know, we've been paying grants to businesses quicker than most other local authorities and really rooting out the people who haven't been helped through the usual government schemes to help them. So I'm proud of what we've done on that. I can give some examples of, for example, we now recycle hugely. When I first became a councillor, that wasn't happening to any great extent. So that's just one example of people's lives being changed. Routinely, people in Cornwall are now helping with that, and that's great. We've declared a climate emergency, and we're putting serious money, tens if not hundreds of millions of pounds worth of investment where we invest into things that will reduce carbon and lead to new ways of living and working. And we're going to do that also with our own buildings, and we're going to be taking seriously post-COVID how we operate to reduce the number of people driving up and down the A30 when it's unnecessary, for example. These things weren't thought about 4 years ago. I'm particularly pleased because I've been involved in the fact that we were the first living wage town, county, Julian will kill me for this, pardon me, unitary rural authority, Dutchy even. We were the first rural unitary authority to become a living wage employer, and we had a unanimous vote of everyone, all parties, to say that we as a council are going to do this, and another unanimous vote to say we're going to actually encourage other employers in Cornwall to become living wage employers. And look, for me, that's the biggest issue facing Cornwall, is low pay, and this council is absolutely tackling that. We've got an investment programme with up to £600 million worth of low interest borrowing available to us to do things that don't need to use taxpayers' money to invest in our communities, in housing, in workspace. We've got town centre action on revitalising the high street. Our buses are getting investment through Councillor Brown's excellent work and the transport team. We have £1 parking, as cheap as £1 for 24 hours, used by residents in our car parks. Despite all the cuts, we've got half-hour trains. We've got 1,000 homes that have been directly developed by this authority, and we remain the #1 local authority most years during this administration for delivering affordable housing. Now, these are not small achievements when you think of all the challenges. And I'd finally just like to end on paying tribute to Julian, particularly on his stance against racism. And I'm absolutely delighted that this authority has rejected anti-Semitism and other forms of racism by adopting measures and are participating with groups who say that one and all means something to us in Cornwall. Cornwall is for everybody. So I'm totally proud of what this council's done, and I hope that it will continue to go down these similar tracks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dwelly. I'm going to go to Councillor Ethorne-Gibbons first and then work my way down through the hands up. Councillor Ethorne-Gibbons, please.
Thank you, Leader, and apologies first of all for rustling during your statement. I do apologise, thereby proving nobody's perfect other than the Leader. If I could make a serious point and really endorse those from Councillor Thoms and Councillor Dwelly, the foundation living wage, I think this is a tremendous achievement for this council. And as the papers say, the council has put an extra 10 million into the pockets of the lowest paid workers since 2017 by paying a real living wage. Now that is really significant, and it says there it requires all our contractors to do the same. I do believe that's a great example of putting people first before politics, and it's something that we all ought to endorse. I'll just highlight a couple of other property matters which I think are important. Those are set out on our papers. First and foremost, the council placing 13 million in building contracts for 3 new workspace centres in Penzance, Liskeard and Hale. Again, the benefits of that are set out on our papers. I think that's a good news story. Likewise, Crescent Kerno, the council's new 21 state-of-the-art archive centre opens in Redruth. I think that is also great news. Another property generation of council-owned Liskeard Cattle Market, that's been approved, and that's brought a number of jobs. So I think from my perspective, the people and property, we've achieved a lot over the time against very difficult funding issues. So I think we can be pleased with what we've achieved, and certainly I would echo my thanks to officers who've supported me over the past 4 years. That's all I have to say, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ethorne-Gibbons. Councillor Rothschild, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll be very brief. The achievements of adult social care, we're the last of the all-member briefings, which will be this Friday. So rather than go through it now and go through it again on Friday, I urge colleagues to join us at the all-member briefing on Friday, and they'll get the good illustration of what adult social care has been up to over the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rothschild. Councillor Hannaford, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So whilst the pandemic has demanded our attention, and quite rightly, over the last year, the climate emergency is a defining challenge of our time and will command the council's and Cornwall's focus and direction for at least the next 10 years and beyond. So the pandemic has forced us all to adjust our lifestyles, and it shows that the 2030 carbon neutral target, it is attainable. The key will be capitalising on residents' appetite for change, as expressed in last year's resident survey on the impact of the pandemic. So residents have got a greater appreciation of open spaces, cleaner air, more wildlife, a cleaner environment, closer communities and reduced traffic were the most mentioned topics when residents were polled, and they want to see that retained and enhanced. So in our green and prosperous priority, our climate change actions to date are impressive and they are embedded in all that we do. So just a flavour of those, we've increased the number of electric vehicle charging points. We have erected the first smart grid connected wind turbine in Cornwall on council-owned land at Benton Teague, providing enough renewable energy to power over 1,400 homes. We've also commenced our whole house retrofits with 83 homes to improve their energy efficiency, and we're capturing methane gas from Cornwall Farms slurry pits, converting it to biogas. We've developed and introduced a new decision-making wheel to ensure we put people and our planet at the heart of everything we do. Social justice is really important. We have supported schools' eco-conferences, helping young people and teachers understanding of climate change, as well as creating a carbon neutral Cornwall Youth Ambassadors Network. We've invested in Cornwall's first wave of electric fleet vehicles, and we've provided online carbon literacy training for all our employees, and we hope to roll that out to members as well. And of course, the Forest for Cornwall, our natural climate solution project. We planted 100,000 trees with the help of people of Cornwall and the Woodland Trust since we launched in December 2019 in Saltash. And yesterday, another first for Cornwall, we launched the Back the Future crowdfunding platform to further enable our communities to take climate change actions. In our democratic Cornwall priority, we have championed a pioneering approach to localism, which is not acknowledged nationally as being well advanced. We have successfully delivered library transformation programmes in partnership with our communities. We've improved our communication and engagement with our communities, expressed by the huge improvements in resident satisfaction. We've already transferred 100 assets back to under the control of our local communities, and we've allocated £1 million budget per annum to fund local highway schemes chosen by community networks and local people. We're supporting hundreds of town and parish councils in the development of neighbourhood development plans and place shaping toolkits, and we've enabled more communities to take on enforcement powers to tackle problems in their local area. Crucially, we're also supporting significant community action on climate change through the localism approach as we decentralise and decarbonise. So finally, I would like to thank the people of Cornwall who are passionate about taking these actions, but also the officers who have helped deliver our aim. The Council and Cornwall should be proud of what we are doing, but we need to do more, of course. And we're often held up as exemplars in climate action nationwide. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hanford. Councillor Nolan, please.
Thank you, Leader. In praising, commending the work that's been done in my portfolio, I have to leave people out. It's a massively wide portfolio, like a small district council, covering so many things, from really big things like Cornwall Fire and Rescue, that this week saw the first female fire chief appointed in the southwest, to very small but important things. 10 years running, we've won the Golden Paws Award for reuniting lost dogs with their owners. Small, but you know, if you're those people, very important. Tackling antisocial behaviour has been an absolute priority. Our antisocial behaviour officers have worked really hard with tremendous support from our drug and alcohol teams, which has got national attention for work they're doing, and our subcontractors like We Are With You. I was very pleased to see that St Austell and Truro will be joining Penzance in having a dedicated antisocial behaviour officer, which just makes a difference having someone out on the beat in the community. And Safer Cornwall produced these Z cards, community safety in your area, where you can find support quickly. And I had cause to use mine on Sunday night when Councillor Bull phoned me and told me that there was somebody sitting in a doorway in Truro shivering and didn't know what to do, and I was able to look up where to get some support for them and get it sorted. Our green infrastructure for growth team, this is a diversity in my portfolio. Green infrastructure for growth team was named as the best biodiversity project in the UK for 2020. For most of our residents, what that means is they'll see longer, the verges not cut quite so often, longer grass, more wildflowers in the verges as they drive around. And Cornwall gets that. 10 years ago, people would have complained that they were looking a bit raggedy. Now, a massive majority of our residents support it and are keen for us to get on and do it to give the bees a chance. Flood funding. In 2019, we received an additional £487,000 funding boost to help homes and businesses become more resilient to flooding. There are bids in for funding to protect our sand dunes, towns, around Cornwall. Another bid in for flood measures at Nevergissey, alongside the work being done at St Austell Bay area, the STAR project, the work that's already been done in Long Rock, and the beaver project, reintroducing wild beavers to Cornwall to use them to help reduce flooding downriver. I have to mention our new waste contract. We're already seeing the new lorries out and about, increased capacity for recycling to reflect our changed lifestyles. They can handle a whole lot more cardboard than the old lorries used to be able to, which we seem to have a lot of these days. And they've got CCTV on them, so we can watch in real time how the lorries are getting on, what they're doing. So when a resident tells us that their bins haven't been collected, we can actually see what's happened and deal with it quickly. Right, and just go at the end back to our environment. Our Making Space for Nature team spending £2.9 million working with groups across Cornwall to transfer green deserts. These are these little patches just of grass that we used to put in estates that actually have no life in them and no real purpose, transforming them into wildlife friendly places, all contributing to what we're doing to make Cornwall a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nolan. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Leader. And trying to sum up 4 years with transport in a few minutes is going to be quite challenging, but my introduction to the transport portfolio was sudden and dramatic, as only a few days into the role, Coverack was devastated by an intense flood, which made the village resemble an earthquake zone. Yet Cormac were quickly mobilised, and when I left Coverack 8 days later, they were just finishing the white lines on the roads, which they'd completely rebuilt in the village. On this and numerous other occasions, such as Town Beach Promenade, Penzance Prom and Portreath Harbour, all which suffered intense storm damage, the almost instant response of Cormac to minimise damage, effect repairs and keep our residents safe truly justifies the benefits of having Cormac as a responsive arm's length company of the council. Our focus during this administration has been to create a fully integrated transport network with the customer at the very forefront, the first outside London. And our aim is to have one timetable, one ticket, one standard and one brand, Transport for Cornwall. We now have a half-hourly mainline service between Penzance and Plymouth, subject of course to COVID, and enhanced branch line services. An 8-year contract to deliver Transport for Cornwall buses has just seen receipt of our 102nd brand new bus with contactless payment, so important at the moment. Euro 6 diesel engines, the cleanest, greenest diesel engines available. Whilst we continue to monitor progress on electric vehicles and hydrogen power, the rural nature of Cornwall does not yet allow electric buses to operate effectively. All this has been achieved by working in close partnership with the agencies, Network Rail, Great Western Rail, Highways England and the Department for Transport. And I'd also pay tribute to the great team in transport at Cornwall Council who have been instrumental in driving improvements. Our airport has survived the double hit of the demise of Flybe and then almost immediately the COVID impact. But we are poised to come out of lockdown in a strong position to recover our position as the fastest growing regional airport in the UK, with renewed flights to London, Manchester and beyond from a range of airlines. Our harbours have been effectively managed by the Harbours Board, and our roads remain in the top 25% of road networks in the UK, and we've dualled the A30 at Temple. I've already referred to the new bus fares pilot. Looking forward, the community network highways scheme, which I introduced, appears to have been well received, enabling local members to address many local issues, and I hope this scheme will continue into the future. To date, 487 local schemes have been started or completed. I look forward to the completion of the dualling of the A30 from Chiverton to Carling Cross, and would welcome everybody with the next strategic priority being the A38 and delivery of the planned Camelford bypass, which will do so much to improve air quality. Parking is critical to the effective operation of traffic in our towns, and I was pleased to be able to introduce free evening parking in most of our car parks after 4 p.m. and will work with town and parish councils to best meet their needs. During lockdown, all of our car parks have remained free to use, and that will ensure that residents can park safely and stay at home and stay safe wherever possible. We've not yet set a date to start recharging, but we'll monitor the exit from lockdown and provide ample warning to residents when charging resumes. We can also look forward to Cornwall Airport Newquay being the focus of attention in June this year with the G7, and the release by government of regulation details will hopefully see it transformed into Europe's first spaceport with low orbit satellite launch initially, delivering a great future for our young people. It's been a huge privilege to work with a great team of officers, and also to have the support of all members from all political persuasions. And I feel that transport is in a very strong place to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Leader. I too would like to start off by thanking all those members of the housing team at County Hall and our colleagues at Cornwall Housing Limited, our partners, and all the charities who've helped us over the last 4 years make some real achievements here in Cornwall. So, preventing homelessness and working to end rough sleeping. Since the introduction of the Homeless Reduction Act in 2018, over 70% of households approaching for assistance have been successfully helped to prevent them from becoming homeless. Outreach, health and specialist services have been expanded, and a new mobile assessment hub for rough sleepers was opened in 2018. Planning approval has recently been secured to establish a permanent hub at Chuff House in Truro, and works are due to commence shortly. The council provided funding and support for Coastline's new Chywinda Homeless Centre. Also, we had full support across all parties for a £39 million programme which commenced in 2019 to acquire a portfolio of homes to provide temporary accommodation and help close the gap on the cost to the council through housing benefit. In 2020, a new homeless and rough sleeping strategy was approved by the Cabinet. This sets out priorities and plans to prevent homelessness and to work to end rough sleeping across Cornwall, working, as I say, with a range of partners. And the everyone in commitment, I think, was extremely well met here in Cornwall during the COVID-19 pandemic, with the offer of accommodation to anyone at imminent risk of rough sleeping, helping over 400 individuals. One of our main commitments for the council was to provide 1,000 new homes. Early this year, the target to provide those 1,000 new homes was met, and I don't think that can be underestimated. These homes delivered across Cornwall include social, affordable and private rented, shared ownership and private sale properties, and were delivered both directly and in partnership. The council has consistently been among the top performing local authorities for the provision of new affordable homes, and has actually held the #1 position this year and last. Over £200 million has been committed to invest in providing 1,700 new council homes by 2028, an investment not seen in the last 40 years. The housing development programme was launched with a focus on providing quality market housing and sites with capacity for over 1,100 new homes, and that has been acquired for the programme. Following a council commitment, there was much debate and again unanimous support, fire suppression systems are being installed in all new council developments. Bringing empty properties back into use. In 2016-17, there was over 3,200 long-term empty properties, a level almost 1.5 times above the national average. In 2021, the number of empty homes is now at its lowest level since Cornwall Council became a unitary authority. Approaching 400 long-term empty homes have been returned to use with council intervention. And we actually now also have our first compulsory purchase order for a long-term standing empty property has been authorised by the Cabinet. Improving private rented sector standards. An overview and scrutiny committee member inquiry into private rented sector has been undertaken with recommendations to consult on the use of extended licensing in selected areas in Cornwall to raise standards. Our view at the council has that all standards, whether they're private or social housing, could do with improving here in Cornwall so that all the residents have a fit home to live in. There has been a continued growth in the mandatory HMO licensing scheme with over 600 share properties now licensed, and levels of engagement with landlords and property agents has been expanded through membership of the council's Cornwall Responsible Landlords Letting Scheme. And finally, I'd just like to comment on meeting the housing and support needs of vulnerable residents. Over 3,500 residents have been provided with disabled adaptations over the last 4 years through the council's Cornwall Home Solutions service, and where properties cannot be adapted, the service has assisted residents to move to other housing to meet their needs. The Handy Person service has assisted over 2,000 older and vulnerable households with minor repairs and improvements. New supported accommodation schemes have been developed for individuals with learning difficulties, and over 3,500 vulnerable households have been helped to make their homes cheaper to heat as part of the council's commitment to address fuel poverty. Those are just some of the highlights that I've placed before this cabinet meeting. There are many more, and I say many people to be thanked, but I'd also like to just thank all members across the council who have supported and challenged when needed the direction of the Homes Department at Cornwall Council, and it's been a pleasure to work with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Hawken, please.
Thank you, Leader. And like others, I will say that this is going to be difficult to try and focus on just some things, and there seems to be so much that's happened in the last 4 years. So the opportunity to say a bit about public health and children's services is really welcome. I'll do my best. We all know the pandemic response that public health have been involved with, and I hope are deeply proud of that. It's an achievement that's gone above and beyond the National Test and Trace programme. We're one of the first areas in the country to begin case review services, which are more commonly talked of as contact tracing, used to great effect when following up on specific outbreaks. We set up the drive-through vaccination centres across Cornwall, launched a rapid community testing programme, testing asymptomatic people. As we know, 1 in 3 have no COVID symptoms. But the health achievements span other areas too. Very important work in mental health arenas, suicide prevention, smoking cessation, and supporting eating healthily and getting active. Fit for and during pregnancy was recognised as good practice nationally. And there's been strong fuel poverty interventions, 3,500 homes improved, 660 fitted with first-time central heating, with 509 due to complete very soon. It's a team I hope are front and centre of all the council activity going forward. And we have a permanent Director of Public Health, really pleased we've appointed Rachel Wigglesworth to that role. Together for Families, clear journey of improvement, integration and moving to real place-based delivery. We have a One Vision partnership plan which gives us a multi-agency collective approach which is strong. In April 2019, Together for Families became a thing in existence. We, as a combined directorate for health and children's services, we brought in school nurses, health visitors, speech and language therapists, and made it simpler for families to seek help. The whole emphasis has been about prevention to avoid the escalating children in care numbers that we see elsewhere in the country. Our corporate parenting role is particularly pleasing. Early in the administration, we agreed as a cabinet to have a council tax exemption for those care leavers up until age of 25, which is a powerful way of demonstrating that commitment to corporate parenting. It would be wrong of me not to mention that we had an Ofsted visit in late 2019, in which we were rated as outstanding. This puts our children's services in the top 10% of local authorities in the country. This turnaround since the 2009 inadequate judgment has arguably been the standout achievement of the council since its creation. We have a new senior leadership team in Together for Families who've had to hit the ground running with the strangest induction to the council that none of us could have predicted. Meredith Teasdale has risen to the challenge admirably, and I'd like to thank her and her team. It's been a privilege to serve as lead member for children and public health. I'd want to thank all the staff across those directorates for their passion and commitment. And as I said at scrutiny, particularly those behind the scenes, perhaps in HR, business support, communications, all the officers who support the front line and ensure that front line delivery continues for families across Cornwall and enables it to be effective. Thank you to Children and Health Scrutiny. Your support and challenge has been hugely valuable to me. There was a time when I used to say that Health Scrutiny weren't asking enough questions about public health, and that certainly has turned around. So it's been a privilege, yeah, there's been some powerful lessons that we will take forward to the future.
Thank you. To echo your words, Councillor Hawken, but thank you, Councillor Hawken. So that's the cabinet members that have indicated. So I've moved to the wider membership. We've heard today, but throughout the last 4 years, Councillor Taylor, you've got your camera on. I haven't seen that you've indicated the importance of scrutiny. So scrutinising the decisions that cabinet makes, but the scrutinising all that the council does, but also policy development work that's done in the overview and scrutiny committees. So the first three people that have indicated are all scrutiny chairs. So Councillor Rule first, please. Councillor Rule.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to all the colleagues there. Leader, before I start, you thanked everyone else so eloquently in your announcements. May I thank you for your leadership, especially during this awful pandemic. You've steered us all through what needed to be done brilliantly. Going back to the scrutiny, which is what I'm supposed to be talking about, it's been a very busy 4 years, but our committee has worked very hard and I think helped shape some of the work of our council. I would like to thank them all for their hard work and dedication, and of course the officers and the cabinet members that we have worked with. As everybody else has said, it's difficult to pull out things that you want to bring to attention, but some notable things I would like to mention, if I may. Working towards our stated priorities, the protect and enhance the environment. We did a deep and in-depth piece of scrutiny to design a new waste contract to raise our recycling rates, and this contract has now been awarded, which is brilliant news. And I'm sure the recycling rates will keep rising, which is good for all of us, really. There's also been a new household waste and recycling centre opened in Truro, which has to be welcomed, I'm sure. I think during this pandemic the HWRCs have been used more and more, haven't they? We did an in-depth piece of work on our county farms estate to see how they could be used innovatively, and I'm therefore delighted to see that we have set up pilot schemes on 6 of our county farms to work on the biogas fuel alternative source of energy for our vehicle fleet. Really exciting news there to see how that pans out. The council have been involved in many flood risk schemes. I think Rob mentioned the one in St Austell earlier on, and we're delighted that the Scrutiny Committee has been involved in supporting that work. We've supported the work of Green Cornwall. The council signed up to a climate emergency plan in 2019, and we've been supporting work on that. For example, the Forest for Cornwall, where many thousands of trees have already been planted. But obviously, as Edwina said, more work to be done and will be ongoing. We're delighted to see that funding has been achieved for another 150 electric car charging points, and welcome those, and hopefully they will be spread around the Duchy, which will be really helpful. When you go to putting people first is another priority, because we deal with that side of things as well in our committee. We've supported the devolution programme. The libraries have been a great success, excuse me, where local solutions offer an enhanced service. The mobile library vans are now being equipped to offer more innovative solutions and really take the council services out to the people. And I'm delighted to see how successful they are, and pay tribute to the officers under the leadership of Edwina. COVID has been a massive challenge to us all, but if I may, I would like to pay tribute to all our officers who've worked so tirelessly and efficiently to keep us safe and cared for in these very difficult times. A special mention to our Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service, who've been recognised nationally for the way in which they supported, and in some areas led, the COVID response here in Cornwall. We've just completed an in-depth piece of work on CFRS, so we know how valued they are as part of our council. So in closing, I'd like just to reiterate everybody else's thanks to my committee members who've been brilliant. And again, cross-party politics didn't come into it, as I think it was Barbara said earlier on. We've just got on with the work, and that's been really heartening. And it's been a privilege to chair the committee, and I'm grateful to them for putting up with me, really. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Rule. Councillor Toms next, please.
Thank you, Julian. It's a pleasure to speak again. I thanked all the senior officers in social care and healthcare in my last speech, and I won't dwell on that any further. Just to say that Jonathan Price has been excellent and helped an awful lot during a lot of situations that have gone on. As has been already said, public health have been absolutely outstanding over the last 12 months and worked very, very hard. But I'm going to pay credit to the people that are unseen and not in this meeting. It's the people at the bottom, the carers, the people that go out and do for people and help people where it's really needed on the front line. And I believe that those new people that have come into social care over the last 12 months with the help of schemes that are running to, not just recruit for the council, but for all the other organisations that we work with, has been great. The apprenticeships that are now, schemes that are now running, which are absolutely fantastic, and bringing our youngsters into health and social care by a means that doesn't make them poor over the next 20 years of their life when they have to repay those things. I really appreciate what they do each and every day, and I think that they're an outstanding credit to Cornwall and all they do for us. Just to say about the committee, there have been instances of where people have become political, but I've got to pay credit to especially Andy Burr, who did the inquiry into the integrated care system. He did an absolutely outstanding job, managed the system very well. I attended every meeting, and I thank him because he was a very calm, collected head at the chair of the inquiry, and he did a very good job. And I'm sure all the members of the committee appreciated what he did. Each individual member has done a lot of hard work over the thing, because like most committees, they get large papers, a lot of reading to do, a lot of background checking to do, and it's hard work. But when it comes down to things like the vaccinations, I've got to pay credit to every single member of the council. In other words, every councillor. And why am I saying that? Because I've seen over the last 12 months how councillors have actually done an awful lot of work in their communities and brought forward everything from help for people that are in need of it, schemes to help them financially, and all the rest of it. And people sometimes malign councillors for what they do, but I think that the batch of 17 to 21 have done an excellent job in general, and that's not just the parties that are in the league, but all members have done a great job, because I've seen work in every single group and every single political group that are in our council, and they've done some great work, and I appreciate that. The vaccinations is the last thing I will talk about, and you know, the vaccination programme working across the organisations has been absolutely fantastic. In my own area, we are the top performing area with the numbers of vaccines that have been given, and I really do appreciate everything that the CCG and the PCNs and all the rest of it have done, because that is our only route out of this pandemic. And once we get back to normal, I think we should pay more credit to them in the next council. But thank you for allowing me to speak, Julian. It is much appreciated.
Not at all. Thank you, Councillor Toms. Councillor Rogerson next, please.
Thank you, Leader. And I welcome the opportunity. Thank you. It's been a privilege to chair my committee, the Children and Families Overview and Scrutiny Committee, because of the complete commitment and focus of all councillors on that committee to the children and families in the Duchy. We are working, of course, with a truly amazing team in Together for Families, and indeed the first couple of years of this administration was all about creating that new directorate, and we scrutinised every last detail over the 2 years, from the process of its development, from the proposed structure, and of course to the philosophy and the beliefs underlying the concept of integration. And I am delighted to report that it appears to be a huge success, as we've welcomed children's health practitioners into Cornwall Council as well, and they report how effective the move has proved. At the beginning of the administration, right at the start, one of the first meetings, Jessie Hampshire came and spoke about the approach that the Cabinet and this administration was going to take, and that it was to be an outcomes-driven administration. And that was very satisfying to me, to be able to prove the work that this council does. But I think there is the possibility that with performance indicators as a good contribution to the aspirations, it's nevertheless very easy to focus on those within your silo, within what your committee is doing. And after 4 years, I've really welcomed overnight actually looking at being asked to say something to this report. And it seems to me that perhaps we don't always make it explicit how the work that we do in our various scrutiny committees feeds into the priorities for Cornwall. And I'm just thinking that perhaps in the next administration, those priorities and the way in which a report links in perhaps needs highlighting at the beginning of a report and by the chair. So it's a bit late for me to say after 6 years now, but nevertheless, it seems important. And I just wanted to focus on a few of the things that my committee has done that has fed into those priorities. So, for example, if we look at homes for Cornwall, 200 children have been placed in permanent homes as opposed to going into care. A huge achievement, whether it's via special guardianship or adoption. But the word homes for Cornwall, what it means to those children, is paramount. Also, the purchase of Cardigan and Barnes, which is to replace a children's home and is going to provide the most wonderful environment for short breaks for disabled children. Connecting Cornwall, we continue to fight. We're not there yet, but we continue to fight for help with the costs of transport for children in care and for and care leavers. Democratic Cornwall, the need, unfortunately, still to lobby for fair funding for our children's services. We are still one of the poorest funded areas in the country, with our high levels of deprivation, and we are performing at such an incredible standard. So we must continue with that lobbying. And green and prosperous Cornwall, well, I suspect that is more important than ever to the children and the young people of Cornwall. It's a huge focus for them, and my committee has been privileged to keep in the forefront of our minds the rights of young people and the rights of children. We have given them frequently a voice at our committee, and I would love to see in the next administration that other committees, not just the one that focuses on children, to invite young people in. It will be easy. It's always been difficult because of schooling and children not having time off school, but now with virtual meetings, it would be quite possible to have some input and to hear the voice of Cornish children. But I guess, of course, the main priority that we would have been involved with is Healthy Cornwall. And I know that Sally has obviously mentioned a number of things, but I just wanted to mention just a couple of figures to give some idea of the input of the teams that work with my committee. There were over 10,000 requests to the Early Help Hub, 10,000 requests last year. And at any one time, over 2,000 families are actually receiving help. And that's a huge credit to the teams that my committee is working with. They also tracked thousands, I think the figure was about 3,000. They were tracking 3,000 vulnerable children throughout the pandemic. And I cannot begin to say how thankful I and my members are for that. I just want to finish by saying we are also aware of pre-scrutiny and the raising of issues that we want to explore, and we've always been grateful for the quality of the reports that have been brought back to us when it's something that we've raised. So I am enormously proud, as is my committee, to have played just a little amount of work, played a part in the Ofsted recognition, the outstanding quality of our children's services, and I congratulate them all. With thanks to Sally for her constant support and advice and guidance, and for listening to what we've said, to Jack and Trevor and Jane, who are no longer with us at the council, but also, as Sally said, to the baptism of fire that Meredith and Kate and Lisa and Ben have worked through, and when they took over at the council. And with their teams, I just want to say that they have risen to the challenge and to the scrutiny. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rogerson. I thought I saw an X in the box pop up from Councillor Taylor, but it hasn't come into my screen. So I'll come to Democratic Services in a moment just to check to see who's got hands up or X's in the box. Before I do that, just a couple of words following on from Councillor Rogerson's comments around listening to young people. I remember very well when we had young people attend informal cabinet, and also a session around in terms of listening to residents and forming Gillen Moor Bath, and those are powerful moments, listening to our young people, and absolutely agree that we need to make sure whoever's in the next council that we continue to do that. Louise, can you help me with X's in the box, please? Am I missing any?
Leader, I can't see any new X's.
Oh, okay.
I'm not wrong. But I see Councillor Taylor is here. She may wish to ask a question. She's having trouble with her chat box.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Leader. The question I wanted to ask, please, is on page 167, and I note with interest the item about homes for Cornwall, and I'm not expecting a verbal answer today, but I would appreciate a written one. My specific question is the support the land trusts and other providers to deliver homes. I would be quite interested actually to see what land trust and other providers have contributed to those numbers. So absolutely happy to have a written response to that one. Thank you.
Thank you. So I can see I've got the Chief Executive to come in, but I can't see anyone else. So I'll go straight to Councillor Mitchell. Sorry, Councillor Mitchell, turned off your camera. If you wanted to respond to Councillor Taylor now.
Yes, no, more than happy to. I'll get the full details of numbers and we'll write to Councillor Taylor and copy everybody in just to let them know what support we have given, not only direct to individual place-based community land trusts, but also to the overarching Cornwall Community Land Trust.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. So Chief Executive, please.
Thank you very much, Leader, for allowing me to speak. On behalf of officers, I just also wanted to take this opportunity to thank Cabinet, Scrutiny and all members for their leadership, challenge and support in helping us play our part in delivering the Council's priorities for Cornwall. I think it stands as a strong testament of the actions that the Council has taken over the last 4 years in delivering the services that residents need, providing the support to businesses that they value, and making sure that we leave Cornwall in a better state for future generations to come. Of course, there's still much to be done, and we will be eager and looking forward to working with members after the elections in May as we respond to the challenges and the opportunities that face the Duchy. But today, I hope to all members that you can look on this statement of what's been achieved over the last 4 years with pride, whether you're planning on standing again as a testament of what's been achieved. But if you are not planning on standing, that you can take this document as a source of a record of the contribution that members have made. I know for us as senior officers, the opportunity to work very closely with members through the community network panels in the last 12 months as we've worked together on the pandemic has given us a really important insight into how you are the eyes and ears out in the community, how through your advocacy you help connect the work that the Council does to our individual communities. And it's felt, as we've pulled this together, it's been a team effort. So thank you, Leader, thank you, members, for your work over the last 4 years on behalf of the officers of Cornwall Council.
Thank you, Chief Executive. And Councillor Painter, if you'd like to come in, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for those that have spoken before and given their views about what's happened over the last 4 years. I think it is really important that you take time to look back and see what has been achieved. And despite a number of challenges, I think the council as a whole, that includes all elected members and certainly all members of staff, have done a huge amount for the people of Cornwall, especially over the last 12 months during the pandemic. But I would just like to pay tribute to all Cabinet members, certainly 4 years ago when we came in and spent time pulling together the priorities. I think that was extremely important, the way that we pulled together the results that we can see in front of us with this paper today. Having our priority areas being really laser-like focused on these priorities to make sure that we deliver them, to make sure we deliver what the people of Cornwall had told us they wanted us to do. Certainly aligning all our priorities alongside the budget and alongside the performance indicators to make sure that was a huge amount of work we did very early on to make sure that we bring together everything so that we can deliver. And I think that was the key thing that we needed to do, and certainly a learning for the next council, making sure that you need to align those areas, otherwise things simply don't happen. So I think it gave no doubt to our officers about what we wanted to achieve, where our priorities were, where we wanted to focus our time, our energy, our money to make sure that we delivered what we said 4 years ago that we wanted to do. And I think in spite of the pandemic and in spite of real terms funding cuts from central government over those 4 years, we've continued to deliver on our priorities that we laid out. So thank you to all cabinet members, and certainly thank you also to Councillor Bob Edgerton and Councillor Sue James, who also were important parts of this cabinet and helped us deliver many of the things that we're talking about and see in this paper today. So that really was great. I certainly enjoyed my 2 years as leader. I think it was a really interesting time, but I think I very much had the easier end of the bargain, shall I say. I think my 2 years were certainly interesting in setting everything up for the council to deliver over these 4 years, but I think big thanks to you, leader, for the work that you've done over the last 2 years. It really has been a huge challenge, far greater, working within the pandemic, having to pivot all our work to look after the people, the businesses and the health of Cornwall. I think has been a massive task that you've done extremely well in delivering that. And certainly, little did we know 4 years ago what we'd be facing now. Hopefully we're coming out of it as a stronger place. And I think, as we'd seen in the previous paper around adults, we've got a huge amount of learning and a huge amount of good practice coming out of what we've learned as a council, and certainly what our partners in the voluntary sector and across the wider NHS have learned a huge amount over the last 12 months, and that will be taken forward into the ICS and making sure that we all work together far better for the people of Cornwall. So, whilst there's been many tragedies, sadly many deaths across Cornwall, I think this is something that hopefully we can move forward positively on, and we can look back on the 4 years as some great achievements and look forward to the coming months and years ahead. So thank you very much indeed to everybody, and very happy to support and endorse the recommendations for this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Painter. So I absolutely endorse what you've said about, well, all that you said, but in particular for the next council, that process of what are the priorities, setting the priorities, taking the first weeks, months if necessary, but absolutely understanding the challenges that are facing Cornwall and what the residents of Cornwall want to see delivered. I hope that we've set that out in Gillen Ward Bar, but the new council needs to undergo that process and have that laser-like focus then on delivering for the residents of Cornwall. When I was elected leader, my thanks to all members for that. I talked about 3 priorities for myself and as leader, and we've covered tackling climate change already, so I won't talk more about that. We've covered to a reasonable extent devolution, and certainly that's an area where we've seen, for example, with Councillor Brown talking about the recognition and the government's bus strategy, where devolution has really paid off for the residents of Cornwall, but also how much more there is to do, and that work will continue. But I also talked about supporting Cornish culture and language, and one of the areas is the memorandum of understanding between ourselves, the local enterprise partnership, the Arts Council, National Heritage Lottery Fund and others, and certainly that's provided dividends across the piece. The delivery of Music Education Hub in Cornwall, going back to the young people theme and the importance of the wider curriculum in bringing forward rounded young people that have ambitions in whatever direction they want to achieve, but also importantly in bringing forward Crescent Kerno, the Hall for Cornwall, and support for many aspects of Cornish heritage, culture and language. So real progress being made in those areas. We've reflected that this is the last cabinet, but indeed challenges, the pandemic still are here, and we can absolutely say that cabinet will continue working hard up until the day of the election on behalf of the residents of Cornwall to be doing our best for you. So thank you all colleagues for your comments. The recommendation as laid out has been proposed and seconded. Democratic Services Officer, if we can move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll take the vote by roll call. Please confirm whether you vote for, against or abstain from the proposal. Councillor Jeff Brown.
For.
Councillor Tim Dwelly.
For.
Councillor Mike Heathorn Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Julian German.
For.
Councillor Edwina Hannaford.
For.
Councillor Sally Hawken.
For.
Councillor Andrew Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Rob Nolan.
For.
Councillor Adam Painter.
For.
And finally, Councillor Rob Rotchell.
For.
Thank you. I can confirm that all members have voted unanimously for the recommendation. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Democratic Services Officer, and colleagues. I'm sure will be pleased to hear that I don't have any other business that the chairman considers to be urgent. So in bringing the meeting to a close, I just want to thank again fantastic residents who us members, councillors and officers are here to serve, and as with the recommendation of the last paper, to thank all of our fellow councillors, officers and indeed our partners for all that we've achieved for Cornwall and what they will do in the future as well. So thank you all. Take care. Come away.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, colleagues.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.